Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. This is the second part of the story. What if Fem Orochimaru wants Naruto instead of Sasuke? If you guys enjoy these what ifs, be sure to hit that subscribe button and check out other videos from the channel. With that out of the way, let's start. Tsunade, Shizune and Naruto exited the bar after her story. Jiraiya hadn't moved but looked utterly shocked by what Tsunade shared. As the three were making their way back to Orochimaru's, Naruto was curious about something. So, were you and Orochimaru friends? I think I'm as close to that as she'd allow anyone to be, but it isn't a straightforward relationship and how she shows she cares is a little unorthodox. Tsunade said, "What do you mean?" When I initially left the village with Shizune, I was a mess. Depressed and quickly succumbing to alcoholism and a gambling addiction. Whether I wanted to be completely numb or just hurt myself through debasement, I don't know, but I was hardly functional and Shizune was taking care of me more than I was truly training her. That lasted for about a year before Orochimaru found me. Tsunade stopped to laugh. She was not happy with what she saw. She said there are very few people she deems remarkable and I was one of those, but if I was going to lose myself in grief, it'd be better to just join those I lost. She said she'd give me 3 months to make a decision, and if I were still some stumbling drunk she'd kill me, and even as drunk as I was I knew she meant it. So what happened? She found me 3 months later and we fought. Well, sparred. Sparred for us. You destroyed a forest with your antics. Shizune interrupted. Hey, I appreciate she cared, but no one threatens me, so we had a bit of a tussle. Last good fight I've had, honestly. No, Tsunade-sama. You two are reckless and will just cause destruction. But it'll be fun. Oh, and that reminds me, brat, you got to find someone around your level you like fighting. Not necessarily a rival, as those relationships tend to turn bitter. Don't know too many people who could fit the bill, and the ones I could think of don't much care for me. Who were you thinking of, Naruto-kun? Neji Hyuga, Rock Lee and Sasuke Uchiha. Oh yeah, people take maiming, attempted murders and losing their lifetime goals personally. Shizune offered, helpfully but slurred. They do? Naruto jokingly asked. Shizune nodded before confirming. They do. And it doesn't even matter why. The blonde and the redhead both snickered at Shizune's earnestness. While engaging in light banter as he returned to Orochimaru's, Naruto thought about Tsunade's words. True, as far as taijutsu, Neji, Rock Lee, and Sasuke could push him. Chances are they had skills superior to his own, or in Sasuke's case having it buttressed with the predictive abilities of his sharingan. Neither Shikamaru nor Shino were heavy combat types. They could certainly handle themselves, but it was just a different approach as they favored being several steps ahead of their opponents, leading them into traps within traps. Naruto could plan a few steps ahead, especially when previous experience came into play, but he wasn't the strategist his teammates were. It's what made sparring with them so fun. He had to be unpredictable and improvise in ways that would blow up their plans. Naruto was lost in his thoughts and not fully aware he'd made it to his final destination until he heard Tsunade knock on the door. The trio were ushered in by Kabuto, who led them to Orochimaru's first story office. The manor appeared to be 2 stories but had 2 sublevels as well. When they arrived, there were 3 other people in the room with her. A tall boy in his late teens with white hair and 2 red dots over his eyebrows. 2 teenage females, one in her mid-teens with pinkish red hair, and the other 12 to 13 with red hair and eyes to match, a shade similar to Naruto's. So, this shithead is the our clan head? I don't see it, said the older girl. What? Was Naruto's response. After Tsunade forced Naruto to sober up with the help of medical ninjutsu, the heir of the Uzumaki was better able to engage with his new clansmen. Tayuya was foul-mouthed, so he quickly learned not to take anything personally. She was only respectful to Orochimaru. But she was also funny, direct and honest, which were all things Naruto could appreciate. Karen was interesting. She was, for the most part, pretty quiet and amiable until something set her off. Then she'd explode. Tayuya enjoyed setting her off. As the 3 Uzumaki chatted through the night, Naruto learned that Tayuya was a genjutsu specialist but also had some cool summons she could control through her flute. Karen specialized in medical ninjutsu and research. She was originally from Kusa, but her mother and she were not treated well there, and she was eventually saved by Orochimaru. Naruto tried to include the older boy, Kimimaro he learned his name was, but he was terse and didn't seem interested, so Naruto let him be. All in all, it was an interesting evening getting to know his fellow clan members, even at the cost of a full night's rest. While the Uzumaki had been getting to know each other, Tsunade informed Orochimaru she'd told Naruto about Team Hiruzen's history, including her past with the Sandaime. She relayed how Jiraiya looked beyond shocked, as if he couldn't process the information given. Orochimaru didn't really care that Tsunade blabbed about something that, for almost anyone else, would be considered a highly personal piece of information. Not only did it make Hiruzen and Jiraiya look bad in the eyes of Naruto, but it may cause a rift between the Toad Sage and the old man. Besides, Tsunade was defending her. The two have had the debate long enough for her to know Tsunade's position on the issue. Tsunade can't or refuses to believe she would have made the same choices if not for the fallout of their team. Orochimaru doesn't feel guilty about, well, anything really, but she doesn't like that Tsunade accepts blame for her choices. She did what she did because she wanted to do it. She's not some damaged little girl that Hiruzen broke. She'll never accept that. Also, she just doesn't want to be one more thing Tsunade blames herself for. The woman is so guilt-ridden it's amazing she manages to get out of bed. It's unhealthy and limiting. The two have never and will never see eye to eye on this issue. Outside of their ethics on human experimentation, it is really the only thing they vehemently disagree on. Well, and Tsunade's Hayori. There are pleasant ways to start a day, Hiruzen is sure of this. Granted, he hasn't had what he'd consider a pleasant start to any day in years. There's always something, always. It'd be bad enough if the letter he received from Raza was the whole of it, because clearly his counterpart is a sadistic asshole upstart in need of a beating. Raza finally sent word on if he'd provide aid in the upcoming AIM invasion, and he would, under some conditions. Hiruzen realized the man would try to get something out of this. The fact that it was to their mutual benefit wouldn't be enough prompting to act. But why this? Raza wants to see the fight that should have been the finals of the Chunin exams. Gaara versus Naruto, Jinchuriki versus Jinchuriki. He also wants this exercise is pointless dick measuring to take place in Suna, as to give his boy as much of an advantage as he could. Hiruzen could have safeguards on hand, making sure Jiraiya was there with seals in hand to subdue either of them. However, they are Jinchuriki and things can escalate. There is a real risk of serious, permanent injury occurring, and Hiruzen didn't see the value in it. But he'd have to trust Naruto to handle it, as support from Suna reduced the risk for his own shinobi and gave them more manpower. So, yes, that'd have been enough to sour his mood for the day, but he also had the displeasure of sitting across from a clearly hungover Jiraiya looking both depressed, angry, and confused. It was bad enough he stumbled in, making Hiruzen Zanbiu tense, but the large man just sat down and hadn't said a word. Hiruzen, being used to his students' quirks, knew this happens when Jiraiya is building up to have a conversation he'd much rather avoid. He was trying to find his nerve, and if he held to pattern, the first thing he said would be crass and inappropriate. So, sensei, impregnate any students lately? And there it was. Hiruzen immediately signaled for his ANBU to leave, refusing to do this in front of an audience. He trusted them, but even that had its limits. No, not lately, Jiraiya. The old boy doesn't get around like he used to. But you did get around. So very smooth the professor was. Jiraiya, I'm going to need you to get to the point, as I have actual work and something of actual importance we need to discuss. You toyed with your student and then sent her to your lunatic of a rival. I think that's important. Not to you, it isn't. Every one of her accomplishments was taken as a personal slight by you, Jiraiya. Blame me if you must, in my alleged favoritism, but you burned the bridge between you two, so you'll forgive me if I find this to be a bit hypocritical. Especially from a super pervert. Alleged favoritism? Even now you deny it. No, I'm just tired of having to confront it. I'm not perfect, far from it. I've been a professional killer longer than you've been alive. I mess up, I think too highly of myself. I'm flawed, Jiraiya. So, yes, when I had someone that looked upon me with admiration and desire, I savored it. I indulged in it because it was new and simpler. Bawako and I were having problems. The demands of being Hokage leaves little time to be a quality husband and father, but the excuse had worn thin. She wanted more time, the children did as well. Orochimaru just wanted me. Until you had your fill and threw her away. Yes, I didn't know Danzo was as twisted as he'd become, but for the sake of my marriage and to manage my own guilt I needed some distance, so I reassigned her and limited contact. And before you go on, yes, I've often wondered if how I handled things led her to do what she did. It was one of the reasons I couldn't kill her and let her flee. I often wonder which I regret more. Crossing that line with her, how what I did with Naruto, but I can't go back, only forward. I know, sensei. I'm not sure why I'm here. I guess after Tsunade told me, I've just been thinking about how things could have been different. If I hadn't been so jealous and the like. Maybe she would have stayed on the straight and narrow. Maybe Jiraiya. This is a question I've often had to ask myself as well. So, does this change things for you? No. Regardless of the why, what she's done is unconscionable and I want her away from Naruto as soon as possible, but it does add some context. Not enough to excuse her behavior, but I feel I might understand her a little better, he said with a shrug. Now, what's this business you need to tell me? Raza wants Naruto to fight Gaara. It's his condition to support us against the Akatsuki. I'm not ashamed to admit I wanted to see the fight. Were you disappointed when Naruto forfeited at the Chunin exams? No, it was the right call, but Gaara had the best chance to push Naruto. You weren't exactly forthcoming with his skills, so I know very little of what he can do. He was to be your apprentice, you were supposed to find out. Hiruzen said crossly, which Jiraiya waved off, dismissively. I was under the impression I was to babysit and play bodyguard. If I seriously trained the kid, he'd run through the finals, which he did anyway. I never told you not to seriously train him. The Sandaime shot back. He hadn't. No, you just said you had concerns about his maturity and didn't think he was quite ready to advance, and just so you know, I've been distracted with Orochimaru and the Akatsuki, but we will be having that conversation soon, old man. So you teach him the Rasengan? The Sandaime asked, deciding not to acknowledge the latter statement. I didn't know the kid would get it in a month. Neither Kakashi nor I managed it that fast. That must have stung, Hiruzen said with a smile. Like a bitch and a half. At least his father was an adult before he started showing me up. Jiraiya said, sulking the entire time. Of course, you'll go there with him in case things get out of hand. Of course. The clang of blunted tanto meeting each other rang throughout the private training ground. The smaller combatant was giving it his best, but against a practiced opponent, he was finding himself wanting. The pressure of the assault was unrelenting, suffocating, and forbade any thought. He could only react and react and react, never open to taking the initiative. It was frustrating, infuriating. It was troublesome, Shikamaru said, as he rolled out of the way of the blade aimed at his neck, only to receive a kick to the ribs for his effort. He was in a simple outfit of black shirt and black pants, his Chunin jacket long since discarded. The kick made him realize what a mistake that was. He continued his roll until he got back to his feet, to see his opponent already on him. It was with the barest of margins he was able to block. What the rookie Chunin had not been prepared for was for his attacker's free hand to grab the wrist of the hand holding his tanto and slip into his guard. Before he could make sense of her movements, he was elbowed in the face, causing him to drop his weapon. Next, he felt his arm wrenched behind and above him, causing him to bend over as she kept his arm perfectly straight. He was not given time to dwell on the pain in his shoulder as a fist to the face dropped him to the ground. Troublesome, he said, rolling to his back. Getting your ass kicked generally is, sweetie, Yoshino said. Shikamaru had no response for this. He wanted to complain, but he constantly reminded himself that he asked for this. He recalls how powerless he felt in the Forest of Death, how Naruto did his best to ensure their safety, and then willingly marched toward his doom. Shikamaru hated that feeling. His intellect was rendered a non-factor, irrelevant. Nothing he could think of would have helped in the slightest. That was the gap between Orochimaru and them, so he watched as his teammate crossed swords with someone he had no hope of defeating, only to get stabbed in the end. Now, with what is coming, he knows he has to be more than he is. It isn't enough to be able to plan things 20 steps ahead against people that can blow up your strategies with overwhelming power and skill. He could have been forced to watch a teammate die and been no more useful than a blunted kunai. He resolved to never let that be the case again. "You know what your problem is?" Yoshino asked. She was shocked when her son requested she help him train, as she knew his father was handling his development in clan techniques, but she was happy he seemed to be taking things more seriously. Seeing he wasn't going to answer, she continued. "It's taking you too long to get where you need to be. You keep thinking you can warm up in a fight or flip a switch to get serious when you really need to. That might work as a genin, with a jounin leading you and a jinchuriki at your back. Not as a chunin, and certainly not in war. You aren't going to get breaks to craft your next plan. You'll have to constantly be moving, fighting, defending while creating your intricate strategies. It's a drag, but you're right. I'll have to think more like that troublesome redhead." "What do you mean?" asked Yoshino. "He's good at coming up with tactics on the fly." "Not surprising. His parents were like that as well." "You knew his parents?" "Yes, but not well. His mother was teased a lot as a kid and kept her social circle small because of it, so not a lot of us could say we knew her well, and his father was extremely kind but also very private." "Who was his father, and does Naruto know?" "I can't tell you, and yes, he does. Troublesome." At the Aburame compound, Shino was being watched by his father. The two stood in silence, the son continually stabbing his sais into the wood dummy, and his father content to watch for flaws in his form. Shino started working on these for the Chunin exam finals, but his match with the puppeteer didn't lend itself to close quarters combat. He, too, lamented his inability to aid Naruto against the once traitor. A hive functions best when all can contribute to the embetterment of the whole, but he was unable to do so. It left him with a feeling of shame. His parents tried to tell him his feelings, while understandable, were illogical. He stood no chance of defeating the once traitor and could have done very little to alter the outcome. He'd acknowledged their words and the validity of their argument, but it did little to quell his emotions. Naruto is strong, the strongest of the three of them. Neither he nor Shikamaru would challenge that, but their teammate has never lorded it over them. He never discounts their contributions or tries to invoke his seniority in an attempt to diminish them. He has relied on them, their skills and talents, but when he needed them the most they were impotent. Useless is something he'd never felt before and something he wishes to avoid ever feeling again. So, he resolved to better himself, to diversify his skill set while sharpening himself. He would not be the weak link, he would not be a spectator. But progress is a slow process, so for now, he'd simply focus on handling the weapons in his hands with every ounce of precision he could muster. She sometimes forgot when Asuma was properly motivated he was a damn good shinobi, and somehow she'd managed to motivate him. They'd train and spar before he met his team for the day, and she hadn't been pushed like that in some time. She wouldn't say she'd gotten lazy, but she had gotten content, maintaining her skills instead of pushing. Jounin were the elite, but even among them there were levels. She needed to be a legitimately elite Jounin, her students needed her to be so. Especially Naruto. It was hard being his sensei, not because of what he contained. She wasn't a small-minded fool, but for reasons completely divorced from that. It was difficult to separate how he was on missions. Calm, almost detached and focused, with the borderline shy 9-year-old that commissioned her to talk about genjutsu. She remembered how cute he was, his face still retaining his baby fat. He'd become a seasoned shinobi since then, and it had taken a bit for him to warm up to his team. When he finally did, she realized he was the same good-natured boy, just one that kid behind a facade to those he didn't trust. Her second concern was simply, she wasn't sure how much she truly had to teach him. His chakra control was decent, excellent given his reserves, but not fine enough for genjutsu. She wasn't a ninjutsu type, so had very little to offer someone that could use all 5 nature releases. Stealth? To some extent, but his summons had taken care of a good portion of that. He was ready to be a chunin when she got him and felt a little lost, but they managed to figure it out. Now, however, he was marked by the Akatsuki and by Orochimaru. Kurenai was honest enough to know she'd be of minimal use against either threat as she was. Asuma understood her concern. He'd been around elite shinobi his entire life and understood feeling inadequate. He'd been helping her perfect his nature releases, fire and earth, along with polishing up her taijutsu and kinjutsu, as she hadn't wielded her kodachi in some time. She was also taking a page from Naruto's book, trying to create more original genjutsu, something people hadn't seen and couldn't just cast off. When it was time to remove the Akatsuki, she promised herself she'd be ready, and if she needed to fight Orochimaru to save her student, she'd be ready for that. He never questioned his mistress, it was not his place. She spoke her will and he carried it out. Theirs was a simple relationship. However, when he first laid eyes on the redhead she was so taken with, he had to admit he was filled with doubts, concerns that said boy was not worth his mistress's attention. As if she knew, she arranged for them to spar, and while he never took opponents lightly, he still held little hope for the boy. Kimimaro could admit when he'd been wrong and he misjudged this Naruto. The spar started with taijutsu and the smaller boy quickly learned not to kick someone with the dead bone pulse in the leg, though he recovered quickly. The exchanges were fast, both boys using agility, reaction time and spacing to deflect and slip their blows. Kimimaro initially disregarded the other boy's tactic of kicking him in the calf, instead of the outside of the leg that typical leg kicks targeted. That is, until he started to slow down and wasn't able to put as much pressure on his legs. The boy had been wearing him down. The accumulated damage had taken its toll, but even still, Kimimaro had gotten the better of their fight. Naruto was worse off. A bloody lip is all that remained of the visible damage as his bruises healed swiftly, but he was breathing heavily. Kimimaro admitted to himself that Naruto was a tank, taking hits some of the Sound 5 couldn't endure and keep going. A small part of him was having fun, curious what an all-out fight between the two would look like. Orochimaru-sama called a short break before she had them engage with Kenjutsu, and Kimimaro saw immediately that the redhead was a much better swordsman as he pushed the older boy in what he, Kimimaro, would consider his best skill. The duel was fast, but Kimimaro could tell Naruto was attempting to incorporate some new elements. It hadn't been quite mastered yet, but when it was the uzumaki would be a nightmare. His speed and power were excellent, but his nascent ability to transition from a downward slash to a thrust to a horizontal slash with just a change in his grip and wrist movement was impressive. Once mastered, he'd flow through defenses as he'd either be too fast or too hard to predict for most to stop his offense. Once Orochimaru called a halt to their fight, she informed them this would be a daily occurrence until the month was over and Kimimaro went back to Odo. Both boys acknowledged her words and Kimimaro was dismissed for the day, choosing to shower, change and then explore the village for a bit. While Naruto impressed him, he doubted most of the rest of this trash would. The village was too open for him. The general mood didn't seem befitting of a shinobi village. Civilians all about, concerned about very little and generally in the way. As far as he was concerned, Kimimaro wasn't used to this kind of atmosphere. Odo only had people who were of use to his Orochimaru-sama, and before that he spent his time in a cell like an animal. He had to stop himself from thinking about his time with his clan. It always angered him, and anger would do him no good. They were all dead, so it didn't matter. As he traversed the village, he started to notice a shadow tailing him. Deciding against playing coy, he called it out to see a panther cub emerge and trot up to him. "Hi! Why are you following me?" Oni-chan said you might want some company since you didn't know anyone and Konoha residents can be jerks. "The trash of this village does not concern me," he said before turning around and continuing his walk, and noticed the cub walked right alongside him. "You can return to your summoner." "I'm good," she said, not taking the hint. Kimimaro relented, figuring she'd be content to travel in silence. "Nah." He was wrong. "Yes. What do you do for fun?" "Fun? I'm a warrior. I don't concern myself with fun." "That's stupid," the cub said. "That is not stupid. It is dedication. Oni-chan is dedicated and he still has fun. He plays ninja with some village kids and myself. The uzumaki is not without skill, but he'd be better if he spent that time training." "He could totally kick your ass in a real fight," she said, and then looked panicked when Kimimaro shot her a glare. He assumed it was the glaring that caused her reaction. "Don't tell Oni-chan I said a bad word. Okay?" He was wrong again. "I'll consider it," he said, causing the summons to relax. He was curious why she was so concerned with the uzumaki finding out about her word choice, but decided it was of little concern. "We should get some lunch. I know the perfect place." "Fine," Kimimaro said and followed the cub to a small stand that served ramen. He learned the cub's name was Magila and she apparently came to the stand a lot, enough to have a tab and be known by the chefs. Tucci and Ayam were some of the few people to treat Naruto decently, so he ate at the stand a lot. As a consequence, Magila did as well. They didn't even hesitate to feed nor speak with her, as if were an everyday occurrence. He paid little attention to the exchange until the expressive cub called him her Oni-chan's new friend. If he were one to do so, he would have snorted. He could respect the Uzumaki, but friends? Jugo was his only friend. He didn't see the need in another. However, the ramen chefs seemed excited and offered him a free bowl in thanks. Their gratitude mirrored Jugo's own, and Kimimaro was curious why it was of note that he'd be friends with, though he wasn't, the redhead. Granted, he knew very little of the Uzumaki's life. He never considered asking and assumed his mistress would give him all the information he needed. Now he was curious. He offered to pay for the meal, but the chefs declined, saying Naruto leaves a balance in case Magila stops by, so it was covered. He decided to return, having seen enough of the village, and the small summons was right beside him. Letting his curiosity get the better of him, Kimimaro was forced to ask, "Why did those chefs find it noteworthy I'm friends with Naruto?" The villagers weren't very nice to him, many still aren't. They treat him like he isn't there, or, at the very least, like they wish he weren't. Almost no one wanted to befriend him, so he was alone a lot before he joined us Panthers. Then he was happy because he had friends. Interesting, Kimimaro thought, but said nothing else as the pair walked back to the manor. As Kimimaro was gone to explore the village, Orochimaru was continuing her training of her latest apprentice. She couldn't let go of the feeling he was hiding something significant from her, and without knowing the full extent of his abilities, she may be covering things he already knows instead of advancing him with new knowledge. It was time she got a full picture of what he could do. Having her snakes bind him was just to help loosen his lips. "You're holding back on me, Naruto-kun." "Huh," he said intelligently. Granted, he was, but how did she know that? "If I'm going to train you properly, I really need to know all you can do. Tai and Kenjutsu I know, and you'll be at a higher level by the time we attack the Akatsuki, but I know ninjutsu is your strongest skill, so what are you hiding?" Just a few things, but they are my trump cards. Also, the old man's ANBU is always watching and I don't want him to know," Naruto said. Seemingly, she approved of the sentiment as she had her snakes release him. As she released him, the ANBU appeared before them. "You have no reason to fear my reporting your skills to the Sandaime. My orders were to protect you, not monitor you, especially as your original techniques all fall under clan techniques until stated otherwise." The ANBU swiftly disappeared after that. "See? Now, please, Naruto-kun, what have you been holding back?" "Well, first, I developed a release technique, but I only have one. It's an illusion. Please demonstrate it," she said, and watched as he hesitated before following her orders. For hand seals later, and she saw a flash of light, and then her world turned black. The only source of color was a red moon and Naruto's red hair. However, his hair was longer, flowing down to the ground, and had become black at its ends. It kept growing until the ends became panthers, all coming from her. It surprised her when she felt actual pain from the bites, and it took a considerable flare to end the illusion. "I call that my Hunter's Moon technique. Impressive. Similar to Tobirama's Bringer of Darkness. But that isn't all, is it?" "No. You should probably come by me, though. My control with this isn't where I'd like it to be." Orochimaru quirked an eyebrow but did as her student requested. He then promptly performed 8 hand seals and slammed his hand on the ground. She couldn't hear his vocalization but didn't have to wait long for the jutsu to emerge. 40 feet from them, she saw something amazing. Unbelievable, really. It rushed from the ground and spread to the sky. Even as far away as she was, she could feel the heat. She could only stare at her apprentice. He'd seemingly done the impossible. "How?" she asked, and he bashfully scratched the back of his head. His natural affinities are wind and water. She knows that for a fact. Kabuto is the best at what he does. It's really just phases of matter. Once you understand that, the trick just becomes molding the chakra. No big deal, really. The 2 senior ninja bearing witness to this couldn't have disagreed more vehemently. Itachi now understood why Naruto wanted to keep this secret. Orochimaru was simply beyond pleased. It seems she has something to learn from her student. She, of course, wasted no time relaying how delighted she was. If you were older Naruto-kun, I'd have you right here and now until you begged for mercy twice. I've never begged for anything a day in my life, he retorted. Twice. She didn't seem to care. What do you call that, by the way? It's my lava style. Burning geyser. It was another team training session for Team 7, and the clear blue sky did not reflect the mood of the team. The Uchiha had changed recently. He'd lost his spark. It was obvious to every member of the team. His drive all but gone. Everything he did was by rote, his body moving through the motions. Sakura was no help, as her history of trying to befriend/ensnare/console the last Uchiha always ended in failure. He dismissed her out of hand if it wasn't about missions. Sasuke respected Kakashi, as much as Sasuke respected anyone, but still could draw no comfort nor inspiration from the man. He was too remote, contrasting Sakura's extreme openness. Sasuke was the acknowledged leader of their pack, but he was faltering, and Kiba, his partner, could do little to help either. He'd taken the secondary position, so any challenge levied now would seem impotent. He'd given up being a true challenge early in their formation. Akamaru was concerned. If the team didn't function well, his partner was at risk, which meant he was at risk. He didn't fully understand why the Uchiha had lost his motivation, but it negatively affected all. He never liked the Uchiha. There was an omnipresent darkness in him. It had been focused and intense. While it's lost its intensity, the lack of focus makes it a possible contagion. Would he bring the rest of the team down, as he believed his emotions were somehow deeper than anyone else's? Would he turn violent as his depression gave way to anger? Akamaru didn't know, and the elders of his pack had very little to say on the matter. He was powerless to change things and could only be diligent in protecting his partner. It was all he could do. That, and hope someone could reach the boy before he sunk in on himself completely or lashed out at others. Neither were ideal, and both would be a waste of potential. Come on, Akamaru. Let's show Sasuke what's what, Kiba said with forced enthusiasm. Akamaru heeded his call all the same. The spar would likely have the same results they always did, but even if Kiba did win, he'd take no pride in it, and Sasuke would feel no shame. This team was going nowhere fast. Of all the ways she had planned to spend her evening, having a civil discussion with Jiraiya was nowhere on the list. He claimed he'd come with important news concerning Naruto, so of course she prepared for another screed on how she was going to corrupt him and make him experiment on babies and kick puppies in her attempt to take over the world. She was in no mood, and Naruto was kind enough to make dinner for everyone, including his fellow Uzumaki, Kimimaro, Majila, and Kabuto, and she'd rather not miss that, as it smelled divine. Now the two sat in her parlor, each in a leather chair staring at the other. Make it quick, she said neutrally. The Kazekage is hinging his support with the Akatsuki on Naruto fighting Gaara in Suna. Sensei has agreed and will leave at month's end. Maybe Sensei should tell Raza he'll help, or I'll kill him myself. Oh yes, the Orochimaru school of diplomacy. When in doubt, hold a sword to someone's throat, Jiraiya said dismissively. What's wrong with holding a sword to someone's throat? A lot gets accomplished by holding a sword to someone's throat. Well, as fun as this is, let me inform the brat, so we can come up with a plan. No. He'll be fine. Gaara holds no challenge for him currently. I wasn't asking. Orochimaru narrowed her eyes. You keep at this, Jiraiya, and you won't like the consequence. You think you can keep me from my godson? You overestimate yourself. Sensei managed it, and you didn't even put up a fight. I'm confident I can achieve similar results, if you push me. To think I felt bad after Tsunade's little story. You're just a bottomless void. I'm more certain than ever you belong nowhere near Naruto. And yet he lives with me and is being trained by me because he trusts me. No, because you plotted and schemed to make it happen. You may be getting away with this now, but it won't last forever. Leave, Jiraiya. Fine. I'll be back tomorrow to speak with Naruto, he said, and made his way to the front door. She just rolled her eyes at the lifelong idiot. She joined the rest in the dining room, where Naruto and Karen were just bringing out dinner. She was never one to enjoy group meals, but she had to admit seeing everyone talking and laughing, especially at Majila's retelling of her time with Kimimaro. It was much more relaxed than Odo, though she realized it's because she terrified everyone, giving the impression she was mercurial to the extreme. Good to keep a bunch of rogues in line, bad for dinner conversation. She paid special attention to her newest student and how he seemed to draw everyone in. He wasn't put off by Taiyuya's language, could get Karen to open up, and even a stoic like Kimimaro was willing to engage. She knew he was something special, but mostly she focused on his potential as a shinobi. It was comforting to know she had chosen correctly, and it was time to start moving things along. As the others cleared the table, Naruto was headed to the library, Majila underfoot, to do some studying, but Orochimaru had different plans. "Naruto-kun," she said. "Yes, Shursho? We need to discuss another part of your regimen, namely recovery." "Recovery?" "Yes. While most experienced ninja know to rest and some even visit hot springs occasional to relax their muscles, most don't pay enough attention to post-workout recovery. It limits their gains as they aren't taking care of their bodies. I won't let you make that same mistake, so take a hot bath and then go to your bedroom. You'll be receiving a massage afterward to make sure there's no tension in your muscles." The redhead simply nodded and headed toward the bathroom nearest his bedroom. After his soak, Naruto returned to his room to see it alight with candles and the smell of incense burning. He also saw a massage table and laid on high face down. He had not suspected the person to give him the massage to be Orochimaru herself, as he tensed when he noticed her presence. This only caused her to laugh as she told him to relax. It was weird. Outside of sparring, Naruto wasn't accustomed to much in the way of physical contact, so even ordinary acts to most people felt intimate to him, so this was doubly so. Orochimaru paid attention to his initial discomfort. Part of the reason she chose to do this was to get him used to her touch so she wouldn't have to later. Also, it was a chance to make him start seeing her as an object of affection and not just a teacher as he had clearly labeled Kurenai. She started at his legs and methodically worked her way up. He did have a great deal of tension in his muscles and knots to work out, so it wasn't completely manipulative. 60/40ths she'd wager. By the time she'd gotten to his back, he'd relaxed completely, no doubt in part to the incense, which were made of a little something extra. It'd also, most likely, give him an interesting dream tonight. He was asleep before she finished, leaving her to place him in bed. She watched as he slept peacefully. Truly, he was beautiful in her eyes. Not just aesthetically, though she reasoned he'd be quite attractive when he matured instead of just boyishly cute now, but it was his potential and drive she saw. It was similar to Jiraiya. When they were kids, she'd seen his potential that was just begging to be unleashed. If he had not been a jealous, petty boy, she'd have continued to be interested in him. Naruto would be greater still and hold none of Jiraiya's inferiorities. He broke the rules of ninjutsu and apparently had been working on his lava release for almost 2 years, all in secret. Ice release as well, after seeing it in action during a mission. Phases of matter, she remembers him saying. Simple in conception, not execution, but he was right. If you can make water vapor and viscous liquids, then ice should be possible. If you can make earth, mud, and stone, then lava should be possible. She, like others, assumed only bloodlines could truly wield the sub-elements, but she was wrong. Because no one was there to tell him he couldn't. Naruto truly believes chakra is limitless potential, energy to be manipulated, and he'll go farther than any before him. That, she believed, was his beauty. Until she was around him, exposed to him. He has a lightness to him, one that shouldn't be there. He's within his rights to hate much of the village or simply deem life unfair and not care about anything, but he doesn't. She's seen him genuinely enjoy others. She was drawn to it, even if it'd be something she'd seek to quash, bend, or otherwise eliminate from others. But with him, she'd protect it, as she sees that quality and his potential as intrinsically linked. His belief in chakra mirrors his belief in himself and his innate optimism. Not naivete, but true optimism that he can improve things if he doesn't give up. It's intoxicating. So much so she has to remind herself not to rush things. He's still too young, so she must be patient, and she will, but one day Naruto Uzumaki will be hers and hers alone. Even if she has to burn the rest of the world to make it happen. Not Jiraiya, not Hiruzen. No one will stop her. She gives Naruto a small kiss on the cheek and departs, knowing more is in store once he gets old enough. She just has to wait. A dark forest illuminated by the waxing crescent. The foliage is familiar, the dewy scents are as well. His only question is how he got here. Well, and where he got these clothes. Over a mesh-lined black shirt was some red armor he'd never seen before. Over that he was wearing a black haori with red and blue flames at the bottom. He can't see it, but a red uzumaki swirl lies at the center of his back. His sword is strapped to his back and he has his kunai holsters strapped to each leg. His black pants, strapped with crimson tape at the ankles, and his black shinobi sandals finish the look. He has no more time to think about his clothing as a tidal wave comes toward him, uprooting the trees in its way. He wastes no time performing a series of hand seals and immediately unleashes a strong blast of wind, one powerful enough to cleave the tidal wave in two, splitting so none of the water hits him. In the distance he sees a figure running toward him with great speed. As the figure gets closer, he sees the glow of Raitun chakra contained in some type of blade. Finally, he can make out the figure. It's Tobirama Senju and he's wielding the Raijin no Ken. Naruto sprinted toward the Hokage with great speed himself, able to perform the full shikuchi without any ill effects. Tobirama readied himself, bringing his lightning blade overhead, preparing to deliver a powerful strike. Naruto draws his blade, smooth and without mistake, coating it with his supersonic chakra. The two blades meet in the middle and neither give way to the other. Naruto placed his left hand on the hilt, now gripping with both as Tobirama is much stronger than him, but that will be to his benefit. Naruto spun, allow Tobirama's forward momentum to carry him forward, while tries to horizontally slash his back, but the Senju was more than ready for that and swiftly blocked the strike with his own blade. Naruto jumped back to give himself some space and the two combatants eyed each other. Without a word the two re-engaged, but there were few sword clashes. Their dance performed in near-perfect silence. He was the better technical swordsman, but technique can be overwhelmed by physical superiority and experience, something the Naidame had in spades. This was leaving Naruto on the defensive more than he would like, but it couldn't be avoided. He knew he had to be patient, to find a true opening and exploit it for all it's worth. Took a few moments, but he finally saw it. A hole in Tobirama's offense. Naruto promptly charged forward with a thrust of his blade, the speed surprising the former Hokage, and just as Naruto was about to score a blow, Tobirama vanished. Hiraition the redhead thought and swiftly turned to where he believed the follow-up attack would come, bringing his sword down. He was met with a clang, but it was not Tobirama's Raijin that stopped his blade, but a tri-pointed kunai. Blue eyes met blue eyes as Naruto stood in front of one of his longtime idols and his father, Minato Namikaze. Without preamble, the Yondaime went for a leg sweep and Naruto jumped back. It was a mistake as the Yondaime kicked him whilst he was in midair, causing the smaller Uzumaki to fly back and roll until he got back to his feet. Minato launched 3 of his signature kunai and Naruto knew he'd be overwhelmed if they got near him, so he tried something. An experiment he hadn't perfected yet. He coated his blade with his supersonic chakra flow and swung his blade, creating blades that flew through the air. He managed to sever the shiki of 2 of the kunai but missed the one, his control over the technique failing at some point. The kunai landed beside him and he jumped forward, turning to face the opposite direction, hoping he predicted right. He didn't. He tried to swing his blade where he thought his father might flash to, but he guessed wrong and was punched in the stomach for his trouble. The hit was hard enough to make him drop his blade and Naruto shunshined away, but another tri-tip kunai was in hot pursuit. Naruto landed on a tree branch, one of the few not taken out by the Naidaime's water jutsu. To his dismay, as soon as he landed he heard a thud. On instinct he sent a great deal of chakra to his left hand, turning toward his right. Rasengan met Rasengan as father and son battled for dominance. Minato eventually released his and grabbed Naruto's wrist with the same hand. Before he could think, Naruto was no longer on a tree but hanging over a cliff. He looked up to his father, who was dangling him, and the man smiled before releasing Naruto's wrist and letting him fall. It was darker. He could see nothing but black as not even the moonlight penetrated. His fall felt never-ending until he landed on something soft. He was on a bed and in a room with sporadic spots of candle light. The scent was familiar, but he couldn't quite recall what it was, but he was very comfortable. He decided to close his eyes. The two former Hokage had pushed him hard and he needed to rest. Kukoku, he heard the familiar laugh and shot up, turning to see his new sensei, in a dark red kimono. Her nail polished matched the color of the kimono and he could see a faint trace of lipstick. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun and the candle light accented the complexion of her skin nicely. She was, in short, beautiful. Desirable in a way Naruto hadn't thought another person could be. Her sauntering over to him, pace deliberately slow, didn't help matters as he saw the sway in her hips and the slip bounce of her breasts. He was feeling things he couldn't put words to. Like some long-lost knowledge he couldn't quite remember. An impression he should be doing something to with her. When she finally made it to the bed and claimed his lips, the picture became a little clearly. Acting on instinct, he returned the kiss, mimicking her motions. His hands around her waist but decidedly unhappy with their lack of activity. As if they had a will of their own, they started to undo her purple obi and he felt her smile. Taking that as a cue to continue, he slipped his hands in her now loosened kimono, each making the slow climb toward her breasts. He was enjoying the feel of his skin, slightly cool to the touch, and wanted to savor it. Before he could reach his intended goals, she broke off the kiss and pushed him back so he was lying flat on the bed. She then mounted him, smiling as she started to slowly drop the kimono from her shoulders. So entranced he could only stare at her eyes until he realized she was topless. Daring to break eye contact, his vision drifted down, once again noticing her red lips and then her slender neck. Just as he was about to lay eyes on her naked breasts, he felt a thud. And then another. And another. "Wake up, Oni-chan. I'm up, I'm up," Naruto near shouted, confusion and irritation warring within him. "Good. It's time for training." "Okay, I'll start getting ready," he said before noticing a certain stiffness which caused him to blush. "After I take a cold shower. Do you have enough clothes?" "Yes." "Enough water?" "Yes." "Weapons?" "Yes, yes, and yes. I have enough of everything," Naruto said while rolling his eyes in faux annoyance. Truthfully, he liked the attention and that someone worried enough about him to do all of this. But Tsunade's and Jiraiya's snickering was of no help at all. Shizune looked at her little brother figure as if to weigh the truth of his words. She's aware he dabbles in sealing and likely has his equipment there, but he's going to a foreign village in a desert. She feels right to worry. "Oink," Tonton says while squirming in Shizune's arms. "I won't forget, Tun-chan," Naruto said. "All right, brat. Go kick some ass. Also, see if you can get some action going," Tsunade said, slipping him some Ryo. "Tsunade-sama, that's improper," Shizune scolded and Tsunade just waved her off. Naruto took the money and shot her a wink. No sense in not buttressing his income for this asinine mission. When Orochimaru Shursho informed him he'd be fighting Gaara, he was less than enthused. Especially not in Suna, a place with an excess of sand. He still believes he can beat his Suna counterpart, but he truthfully has little interest in him. Whatever Suna did to Gaara, they broke him and he's more mad dog than shinobi. What value is there in victory over a beast? Naruto's team had said their goodbyes the night before as they had a mission schedule for today. Kurenai, like Shizune, ran down the list of things he needed to bring and ordered him to stay properly hydrated. Shikamaru wished him luck through a series of troublesomes and Shino bid him fair travels. The last person he was to speak to was the person that had been training him non-stop for the previous month. Naruto hadn't added much to his ninjutsu arsenal, but he had improved on utilizing them. His lava and ice jutsu still took too much time and lacked proper control to be field ready, but Orochimaru was confident it would come with time. His mornings started with a workout and then a spar with Kimimaro. He has come to like the stoic boy, even if said boy calls him Akagami instead of his name. Though as far as nicknames go, it is pretty benign. From there he'd eat and then start on his instruction from Orochimaru. More than anything, she was preparing him to face the Akatsuki members, and while he couldn't match their power, he could out-strategize them with her knowledge of their abilities. Various scenarios were covered for each of the known members and some tentative plans were created. He'd have to develop some more jutsu to handle them, but he was confident he'd be as ready as he could be when the time came. After the study session, she'd work on his various skills, helping him grow more comfortable with his mother's kenjutsu style or other things like predicting behavior from body language. She even started teaching him some of her hibi style, though he'd have to get much more flexible to really incorporate it. That would usually go on until late afternoon, and he was free for the evening. He'd spend an hour absorbing the information from his shadow clones, learning from the materials his mother stored in their vault, which was really just a ceiling array that could be accessed from multiple points, if you knew the array and had the right chakra signature. Once he'd done that and meditated, he'd release the resistance seals, as he only wore them during the day or when training, and go visit his team or spend time with Tayuya and Karen. The three finally decided on a design for their house/future compound, and it would be located by the mask storage temple. Because of the security seals Naruto planned to incorporate along with some other features, the building would take a while, but it'd be worth it when it was all said and done. It had been a good month all told. He was gaining experience, refining his skills. Yep, everything was good. Except the repeated sex dreams he was having about Orochimaru. They didn't happen nightly, but each time got more graphic, and making eye contact with her the next morning was incredibly awkward for the Uzumaki. The only reason he managed to do so was out of fear where his traitorous eyes might drift to if left to their own devices. He didn't want to piss off a Sannin, especially not one that literally knew where he slept. But ignoring his burgeoning sexual awakening, it was a good month. "I expect you to win," Orochimaru relayed while stroking his whiskered cheek. He fought back the knee-jerk reaction that came from people doing that, something he hadn't learned until Shizune did it after his mission to Ishval. Badass ninja do not purr. He just knew his father wouldn't, and he'd be no different. "Hi," was the muted response. "And don't do anything perverted with Jiraiya." "Hi." After ruffling his hair, she walks away, confident her apprentice will handle the Kazekage's son. "Well, brat, we need to go." Jiraiya spoke, then took off. "All right. Bye, everyone," Naruto exclaimed and waved while catching up with the Gama Sannin. Orochimaru soon arrived to Hiruzen's office, as she was to be assigned a mission. It was his justification for why she could not travel to Suno with her student. She found the thought amusing, until Kabuto arrived with an ANBU escort looking worse for wear. That wasn't amusing in the slightest. Both former traitor and former spy entered the Hokage's office to see Kakashi, Guy, and Asuma also there. "Sensei, Orochimaru, we need to start the transition to making Odo a true protectorate of Konoha. I'm sending my top jounin with you to get the necessary information, including a full roster of your employed ninja and any projects you may have. I expect you back in a week's time." "Is that all?" "Yes. Leave within the hour." "Hi." The group of 5 departed, each going to prepare their things, and the Jounin sensei going to inform their students they'd be gone for a week. Orochimaru waited until they were alone before she asked Kabuto how he was and what happened. He assured his mistress that it was a simple interrogation, nothing extreme. He wouldn't betray her for the leaf. He holds no love for the village nor the man that allowed that monster Danzo to trick his mother into trying to kill him. No, Konoha could never have his loyalty. "I knew this would happen eventually. Good thing I ordered Guren to end my existing experiments," the snake Sannin said, causing Kabuto to readjust his glasses, a tick she noticed. "Speak, Kabuto. I just don't know why we had to end our work, Orochimaru-sama. We could have been close to some outstanding breakthroughs. Or not, and it would jeopardize my position here for little gain. We'll start back up eventually. It's merely a short-term loss." He adjusted his glasses again. "What, Kabuto?" "Nothing, Orochimaru-sama. Guess I was just invested in those experiments more than I realized." "Understandable." She spoke, and the two remained quiet. Guy found his team at their normal training grounds, all 3 working separately. It had only been 2 weeks since Niji got his prosthetic arm, but Guy could tell the boy was beyond relieved. He was happy. His team had been made whole and were working harder than ever, youthful flames indeed. What concerned Guy is that much of their focus was not on enemy Nin but a comrade, one Uzumaki Naruto. He understands why. Naruto battered Niji and Lee's bodies. He also damaged their collective pride. They assumed they were the strongest genin in the village, and rightfully so, as Naruto was a genin in name only. But their defeats, the maiming and near murder, are forever etched in their memories. One hand, Guy wants to help them get over their near hatred for Naruto. By shinobi standards, he did nothing wrong and they need to understand this, especially if Sandaime-sama orders them to participate in the AIM invasion. They may have to work with Naruto, be led by him, and there won't be time for squabbles when real enemies are afoot. It may cost them their careers or their lives. But there is another part of him that wants them to keep this drive, as it may leave them to be as prepared for what is coming as anything else. It's a fine line, and the normally boisterous jounin is at a loss of what to do. "Yosh, my youthful students fall in," he shouted and awaited for them to do as instructed. Once they did, Guy proceeded to tell them of his mission to Odo and that he'd be gone for a week. He instructed them to continue their training and he'd see them soon. "Wait, sensei. Isn't Orochimaru the Uzumaki bastard sensei? Is he going as well?" asked Tenten. "No, Naruto has been assigned another mission in Suna. It appears the youthful Kazekage desires to see the match that would have been the Chunin exam finals." "Oh, well, I hope he isn't grievously injured by that lunatic," Tenten replied. "It would be a shame if such a fate befell him." Niji rejoined. "Your intentions are unyouthful, my students. He is a comrade and you do well to remember that. Now I must be off." Guy spoke before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Asuma was also informing his students of his upcoming departure and instructed them to get extra training in with their clans in his absence. Telling them to train together is a waste. 2 of them won't bother and the 3rd won't do anything to force the issue. His team is a mess and the should-be leader is becoming more and more disconnected from the rest. Hinata respects him, if sometimes grudgingly. He is man enough to admit that's his fault. He was too lax when they first formed. He had his reasons. It wasn't simply out of laziness, but given the existing dynamics, he should have been more forceful to start. With what's approaching, Asuma knows there isn't a chance in hell his team will be activated to participate. The only one even remotely close is Hinata, especially after she revealed her skills in archery. Such a long-range threat can't be dismissed. She's got the combat skills to be Chunin, but the leadership qualities haven't shown themselves, and he hasn't any clue on how to bring them out. His other charges just need to get bloody and mature. None of their C ranks have gone awry, so they have a false sense of what this life can entail, even for clan kids. He realized this during the Chunin exams, but hasn't been successful in getting them to transition. He'd have to amend that soon. Asuma dismissed them after relaying his orders. "Hinata, hang back." "Yes, sensei?" "Hinata, I'm going to be blunt. This team is a mess. And it's a mess because of 2 of its members. Like to guess which 2? Ino and Chojikuin would be the obvious answer, but I'm guessing they'd be too obvious. Yes, it's us. I should have been on you guys from the start. That's my fault and I will be rectifying it when I return. But you? You should be this team's leader, but you're content to just hang back and let the others continue on when you know better. Why? I don't want to be a leader. Interesting position for an heiress. Don't want to be that either. Then what do you want? Hinata snorted. That's an excellent question, sensei. Kakashi arrived to his team's training ground and watched as Kiba played with Akamaru, as it wasn't really training. Sakura sat under a tree staring at Sasuke, and Sasuke looked off into the void. He held back a sigh at his team. Kakashi knows depression. He's suffered through it, battled it, and frankly felt he's lost to it more times than not, so he knows Sasuke even getting out of bed is a triumph. Losing your purpose, that is almost indescribable. He sympathizes with the last Uchiha and has ordered him to see a professional to help. It hasn't been long, so there aren't much in the way of results, but Sasuke didn't fight him on it, so he'll take it. Kiba would be fine. He has his family and his partner, but Kakashi would remain diligent, so the Inuzuka doesn't become one-dimensional. Sakura. God, he didn't know what to do with Sakura. No branch of the shinobi arts seemed to grab her. Genjutsu? She could do a few, but the creativity and subtlety required to truly excel in the art? She didn't have it and didn't want to develop it. Iryujitsu? She could do it, and her brief tenure at the hospital during the Chunin exams break seemed to spark an ember, but the experienced Mednans found her ambivalence distasteful. Fair or not, they expected a certain level of zeal if you engaged in the healing arts. Taijutsu? If he made her, and he did make her. Ninjutsu? With her reserves, he'd almost be killing the kid if he pushed her too hard. She was good for her level, her skills were solidly genin, and he didn't know how to push her forward. Ma, my cute genin, I have news. All three stopped what they were doing and looked at Kakashi, making no move to actually come toward him. He'd have to work on their discipline as well. Sure, he didn't really portray any, but he was a former ANBU and an elite jounin. The rules were different for him. They'd have to earn their disrespect. I've been assigned a week-long mission to Oto. Please keep up with your training while I'm gone. Seeing nods, he departs, keenly aware that the little bastards didn't even say goodbye. If Naruto were here, he'd say goodbye. It was the day after Naruto and Orochimaru departed that the two newest Uzumaki of Konoha were walking around the village with Magilla. Naruto wasn't taking her to Suna and she didn't want to return to her realm, so Karen and Tayuya agreed to watch her. Karen was currently carrying said cub. This was necessary, but Magilla loved to be carried and Karen loved soft, cuddlesome things, so it was working out. Tayuya rolled her eyes at the pair but made no mention of their behavior, long grown accustomed to her cousin's quirks. Both were probationary genin, fitting for Karen and utter bullshit for Tayuya if you asked her. She also felt her rank was reflective of her previous association than any real assessment of her skills, but she'd let it ride for now. The old man would be replaced soon enough, Orochimaru informed her, so there was no need to quibble about rank. She still didn't like the Sandame. His facade of the kind grandfather felt fake and manipulative. Knowing what he did to Naruto, someone she had come to sorta like, just cemented her opinion of the man as someone to always be on guard around. The trio were looking for to have lunch. Some of the village's establishments were cold in their reception of the two Uzumaki, so options were limited. Neither knew if it were the Orochimaru connection or the Naruto one, or some combination of the two, but it was real. However, they were never rude enough to be called on it, causing Tayuya to consider them cowards. If you have something to say, she felt, you should say it and stand on your words. The Uzumaki and summons settled on a sushi restaurant that serves them and leaves them in peace, none of the staff batting an eye at the inclusion of the panther cub. The restaurant had the choice between a counter service or sitting at a booth. The girls selected a corner booth as to not draw attention to themselves, no more than the talking animal would anyway. The three sat down and were enjoying their meal before they were interrupted by two kunoichi. Ino Yamanaka was a gossip. She'd admit as much with no shame. Her parents encouraged this as they felt it would passively increase her information-gathering skills. The problem was they never reinforced limits nor boundaries. This made Ino come off like a nosy busybody with no respect for other people's private information. So, when she saw the two redhead kunoichi sit at a booth, she knew they were from the newly recognized clan. The clan that had a former classmate as its head. But she didn't know much outside of that and could not accept such an oversight. So without all the unearned confidence that youth provides, Ino approached the table. Karen, being a censor, noticed the two kunoichi approaching first. She didn't feel any hostility coming from them but was still ill at ease with them. Tayuya soon picked up on it as well but continued eating, confident if the two wanted trouble she'd give them all they could handle and then some. Magilla was enjoying her meal and not really concerned about anything else. "Hi, I'm Ino Yamanaka and this is Sakura Haruno. Who might you be?" she said, making an introduction. "Karen." "Tayuya." Magilla kept eating. "Are you guys new to the village? I haven't seen you around before." "Yes," Tayuya answered tersely. "Where are you from originally?" Ino continued, hoping to get them to open up. "Why?" asked Karen. "I just want to get to know you. We don't have a lot of kunoichi around our age and thought maybe you guys could be our friends." "No, that'll never happen," Tayuya replied. "Why?" Sakura spoke for the first time, confused by the antipathy of the girls. Tayuya patted Magilla on the head to get her attention. "Who are these girls, Mags?" Tayuya asked. "Oh, they were classmates with Oniai-chan before he graduated ahead of them. The blonde one told the pink one not to be his friend because he was bad." Ino and Sakura both looked down in shame. "May not have known shithead long, but we both know enough to not to want to associate with someone who would do that to our clansmen." Tayuya rejoined. "I was 6. I didn't know Naruto, but everyone said he was bad. Don't care." Ino was speechless at the dismissal, turning to walk away in disbelief. Sakura followed her and both girls departed from the restaurant. Ino hadn't thought about how she'd met Sakura in years, the two having a falling out some years ago, and only now, after graduation, had they started to mend their severed bond. As an admitted gossip, it never really dawned on Ino how incurious she'd been about Naruto until recently. She'd readily believed the schoolyard consensus that he was a bad child, and the reactions from her academy sensei did nothing to disabuse her of that notion. Not even after he graduated, as many assumed he simply dropped out. Not until he wound up on Team 8 did anyone even think or mention him, and learning he'd been on the reserves for 3 years made everyone assumed he was just a dead last. Shikamaru tried to tell her differently, but Ino chalked it up to him not wanting the taint of Naruto's ineptitude. After the Chunin exam prelims, Ino was shocked at Naruto's skill with a sword but hadn't been overly impressed with his opponent, so really thought nothing of it. Him breezing through the finals and being acknowledged as a clan heir are what finally stoked Ino's interest in the redhead. Shikamaru was no help. He wouldn't divulge anything about his teammate, and when she asked why, he just muttered troublesome and walked away. She never spoke to Shino and hadn't been willing to change that, not even to find out dirt about someone. And now, she'd been shut out by his clan members, as her previous childishness was thrown in her face. Sakura's thoughts mirrored Ino's. She remembered asking the chubby-cheek redhead to not bother her because he was bad. She remembers, vaguely, how hurt her looked, but he never attempted to speak to her again. Even during the few joint team functions, he made no effort to talk to her or acknowledge she was even there. She never minded it, as most of her attention was dedicated to Sasuke. She knew Kakashi-sensei had some kind of previous relationship with him, having mentioned Naruto a time or two, but it was clear he thought highly of the rookie Chunin. Apparently, his opinion of her was so negative that his clan members wouldn't even consider her someone worth knowing, if for no other reason than to get their own impression of her. That made her angry. The two Uzumaki continued to enjoy their meal, both with smirks on their faces. Truthfully, Tayuya didn't give two shits about occurrences of childish groupthink. When Majila relayed the information on some of the girls of note around Naruto's age, even she made it clear that while Naruto was hurt initially, he simply focused on developing himself. It wasn't some long internalized personal slight. They didn't want to know him, so he just learned to not care. However, orders were orders. To Tayuya's interpretation, Orochimaru-sama ordered her and Karen to keep any too curious or openly interested kun away from Naruto. And she would, as while she may like Naruto, she fears and respects Orochimaru-sama and wouldn't betray her, Karen wouldn't either. 2 days later found the team for Konoha outside the walls of Odo. Odo was interesting in that it looked like Konoha. The buildings were not built as tall, but you wouldn't know it was a shinobi village from the look. And that was by design. The real shinobi affairs happened in the underground facilities, and they were numerous. Asuma was awed by it all. The labyrinth of tunnels and subterranean levels was impressive and confusing. The Odo ninja were professional enough, but there was a clear tinge of fear as Orochimaru walked past. Asuma had not wanted to go on this mission. Not even a little. He, like Jiraiya, had always been jealous of his father's relationship with Orochimaru. How his father praised her natural genius, almost in contrast or criticism in Asuma's lack thereof. He hadn't known why his father suddenly distanced himself from his student, but clearly something had happened. He's always been uncomfortable around each of the Sannin, feeling they were the children his father truly wished he'd had. It may have been immature and incorrect, but it's how he felt. His father allowing Orochimaru to flee after her crimes just solidified that for him. They were simply held to a different standard. It was unfair and maddening. So he really didn't want to be here. Didn't feel he needed to be here, but when he recalled Kurenai's worries over the Snake Sannin's designs on Naruto, he changed his mind. Deciphering the schemes and plots of Orochimaru is likely impossible for anyone with a less than genius intellect and some knowledge of how her mind works, but any information would be better than none. And given how her village looked, Asuma was confused as to why she'd want to come back. Only a handful of Konoha shinobi could be a threat to her, so it couldn't have been the missing nin status. But it couldn't have just been Naruto, Asuma thought. Hoped, actually. The 4 Konoha nin entered an office and Orochimaru was immediately greeted by the woman sitting at the desk. The office was plan, some shelving throughout with books and file folders. 2 chairs on the opposite side of the desk. The woman was sitting and the desk was large but not overly ornate. Not what the Konoha team expected from Orochimaru. Orochimaru-sama, the woman said while getting up. No need to get up, Guren-chan. Do you have all the information these upstanding Konoha jounin require? Hi! There are copies for each in their rooms. Efficient as always. Well, gentlemen, I'm sure Guren has arranged for someone to show you to your rooms. I have other things to see to, so I'll see you when we depart. What if we have questions? I'm sure Guren-chan can help you with whatever you need. Asuma, she said as she exited the office. The 3 men waited for their guide, and once he arrived, they too left from the office. Orochimaru was pleased to see most of her experiments had been more or less erased. It'd take time for that to happen at all of her bases, but Kimimaro was on the job, and with Jugo and Suigetsu aiding him, it shouldn't take long. She knew her sensei would attempt to find something, anything that would upend her agreement with the daimyo. She'd prepared for that and other eventualities. He was so far behind the game he'd never be able to take the initiative. She wished she could take more credit for engineering his fall from grace, but it just so happens her schemes and Tsunade's actions coincided, but she had her part, so it was enough. Once removed from power, he wouldn't be a complete non-threat, but he'd certainly be a far less formidable one. She sometimes wondered if his disgrace was enough. Every member of a clan would know, so non-clan shinobi may through gossip, but had it gone far enough? Could he stand to lose more? She wondered. Kabuto had reported that Hiruzen and Asuma were getting closer, rebuilding their fractured relationship. Why should she allow that? Why should she allow him any comfort? No, his life was to be one of mounting indignities until they crushed him or he died. She knew what she had to do. Asuma had been thoroughly going over the information provided to him, taking special care to not burn any of the documents as he smoked. He appreciated that the room had seals that absorbed smoke. A queen-size bed, a desk, and his own personal bathroom. Not much, but he's had worse accommodations, certainly. He stopped reading when he heard the knock at his door and answered it, palming a trench knife behind his back. One he gripped even more tightly when he saw who was at the door. Can I help you? Kukuku. I was hoping we could talk for a bit. Is that okay? Asuma-kun? He wanted to say no but realized her asking was just out of politeness, so he opened the door fully and allowed her in, sliding his knife back in his holster. What can I do for you? He said, walking back to the bed. Orochimaru stayed standing facing him. I'm curious about you, Asuma. I've known you for years, but I don't really know you. What makes you tick? What gets you up in the morning? Why did you join this mission? I have no idea about any of it. I highly doubt that. I'm sure someone of your genius could read me like an open book, he said between drags of his cigarette. Kukuku, you flatterer. Smooth just like sensei. How are things going with Ms. Yuhi? That would be private, and why would you care? Why wouldn't I? She's Naruto-kun sensei, so her life may affect his. Just concern for your student? Is that not enough? Would you like me to be interested in you, Asuma? No, I'm fine. One woman is more than enough for me. Sensei used to say that until he didn't. What's that supposed to mean? Look, Asuma, you'll do what you want to do, but if you leave Yuhi-chan distraught, that may negatively impact Naruto-kun, and I can't have that. If you're just gonna run around, then find someone else. For once, be better than your father. Are you saying my father had an affair behind my mother's back? Yeah, right. Not the Honorable Sarutobi Hiruzen. Not in 1,000 years. You sure about that? Positive. And if he had, there's no way he'd let you know about it. Unless, Asuma said and squinted at the Sannin until the light switched on. No, I don't believe. I will never believe that. You don't have to, he's not why I'm here. Just be responsible, and if not, at least don't force her to abort the baby. Be better than your father in that regard. Orochimaru spat and vacated the room. She grinned all the way down the hallway. She'd be blunt, and she knew Asuma's instincts would tell him she was attempting to manipulate him, pit him against his father for some reason. He wouldn't allow that, but she didn't need him to be disloyal, just distant. He may serve his father, but he wouldn't trust him, not for a while. Unless he can fully convince himself his father is innocent, Asuma will at the very least have doubts, and that small seed is enough. She's already won again. The sun had only recently set, and yet the temperature change was immediate. Suna, especially at night, was beautiful. Not the same way Konoha was, admittedly, but there was a stillness that was often hard to find in his home village. The air wasn't as crisp, feeling drying, but it was pleasing all the same. Naruto was sitting on the roof of his inn, taking in the village. The Konoha duo just arrived earlier today. The match was scheduled for tomorrow in their Chunin exam arena, and they were slated to leave the day after. Health provided. Traveling with Jiraiya was fine. Naruto didn't take to his sense of humor. The Gamma Sannin relied too heavily on innuendo for Naruto, and it felt disingenuous for some reason. However, when he wasn't making his pervy jokes, Jiraiya could be good company. The two discussed Fuinjutsu a bit and strategies to combat Gaara. Jiraiya was satisfied with Naruto's intended approach, so Naruto felt prepared. He wanted to enjoy the chicken satay he ordered from the stand, but the killing intent directed toward him was making it impossible. He was familiar with the source. Gaara spilled killing into like a bottle with a hole in it leaked fluids. Naruto just wished he'd do something or leave. His presence was becoming bothersome. But seeing as his fellow Jinchuriki wasn't going to do anything but observe, Naruto decided to act. "Can you just come on out?" Naruto said, annoyance clear in his tone. "Mother wants your blood, Uzumaki." "Okay." Gaara was momentarily thrown for a loop. There had been many reactions to his declaration of his mother's desires, but never an okay. "You're not afraid?" "Not really. You're strong for your age, sure. Dangerous even, but no real reason to fear you now." "Why not?" "You aren't attacking me. I don't believe you came here to attack me now, not when we'll fight tomorrow. So, what do you want?" "To tell you you're going to die tomorrow and help me prove my existence," Gaara said, coming out of his confusion. "How does that work?" Now it was Naruto's turn to be confused. "I only exist for me, and I prove I'm alive by killing all those that would seek to harm me." "Oh, that sounds lonely. So, you want to kill me because we have to fight tomorrow?" "Yes. Mother says you are strong and therefore are a threat to me. I must remove all threats." "Then you're focused on the wrong person. The guy I came here with, he'd cracked both our skulls with minimal effort. That's power. We're both just exceptional for our ages. Besides, not everyone who could harm you would want to. That has not been my experience." "You want to tell me about it? Why would you care, Uzumaki? It won't help you defeat me." Naruto rolled his eyes. "I didn't think it would. Look, my food is getting cold, but I hate eating alone. You can come sit down and talk to me while we share this, or you can leave and let me eat in peace. I'm not trying to trick you. As far as I'm concerned, we aren't enemies." Gaara was initially hesitant, and the voice of his mother wasn't helping, but he decided to sit down and share a meal with the confusing redhead. The two Jinchuriki initially sat in silence, both staring at the moon before Gaara spoke. He said the moon reminded him on the night his uncle tried to kill him, and then relayed his experiences in Suna. How everyone viewed him as a monster, how no one cared for him, and when he decided to live only for himself. "I get it. I mean, no one attempted to assassinate me. Not that I know of, at least, so your situation was worse than my own, but I do understand. I used to be really angry when I was younger, angry at everything and everyone. Why did they ignore me? Why did they seem to wish I wasn't there? Why could everyone else have friends and family but me? What had I done?" Naruto said, "I was so angry but too weak to do anything about it, so I started to train. When I entered the academy and the sensei didn't like me, didn't want to treat me like everyone else, I trained even more. I wanted to prove I didn't need them. If they didn't want to teach me jutsu, I'd create my own. If they didn't want me at the academy, I'd graduate early. If the Sandaime didn't want to give me a team, I'd become the most powerful reservist ever. But you know what? What? The anger never went away. I was often too tired to think about it, but it'd still be there in the morning to greet me. It'd still be there when I ate, filling the silence of my life. My summons helped. I got them when I was 8, and it helped having them, but it wasn't enough. The glares and the shunning were still present. Creating my own ninjutsu didn't help either, not fully. Graduating early certainly didn't. All these things I was gaining and accomplishing diminished it but never removed it. So, what did you do? Gaara asked, truly interested in what the boy had to say. I had to let it all go. Part of the reason I was still angry wasn't just because it was unfair but in wanting their acknowledgement. I had to accept I may never get it and truly embrace those that did see my value. In a sense, I forgave them. Not absolved, but I gave myself permission to not hate them anymore. I had my summons, I had my training, and I was starting to gain people who did see me for myself. One of the academy sensei that was so cold to me apologized a few months after I graduated and said I could come to him if I ever had any questions. A couple of jounin helped me further my knowledge in their areas of specialty. One even became my jounin sensei. I'll probably never be universally loved. I can't change the minds of everyone, but I can value those that value me. I don't know what will happen tomorrow, but if you want, after everything is settled, maybe we can try being friends. Naruto suggested at the end. Is this a trick? No, Gaara, no trick, but I get why you think it might be. Even if you decide we can't be friends, try to find someone you can connect with. Living for yourself is hollow and you don't deserve a hollow existence. Well, it's getting late. Think about what I said, Gaara, and I'll see you tomorrow. Naruto said, leaving the roof. Gaara just sat there for a while in silent debate before sunshining away as well. The near midday sun couldn't be a more pronounced distinction from the night Naruto enjoyed. It was beaming unrelentingly upon all beneath it. He'd arrived at the arena 20 minutes ago, waiting for the start of this farce. The arena was full of Suna shinobi and civilians, something that further annoyed Naruto. He'd be going to war with an organization of S-rank shinobi soon, so of course, he'd want to broadcast his techniques to any so inclined to see them. This was so very stupid. Not that Gaara wasn't a challenging opponent. He'd have to stay sharp to avoid getting seriously injured. It just seemed pointless. He was a shinobi and this was a cockfight, even more so than the Chunin exams because this had no larger purpose than one man's curiosity. Naruto truly disliked people that abused their authority, especially when they did it for idiotic reasons like this. Learning the man attempted to murder his own son only deepened his dislike into a true loathing. The Kazekage was scum, as far as Naruto was concerned. Gaara finally arrived and the proctor, the jounin that accompanied Gaara to Konoha, signaled a start and Gaara immediately sent his sand after Naruto. Naruto wisely made haste, performing a shunshin to create distance from his opponent. When coming up with a strategy to defeat Gaara, Naruto ran into some limitations, namely Gaara's sand defense. He didn't want to kill nor seriously harm an ally. The problem was anything that could penetrate his sand defense could penetrate him. When you make a hole in a human, they tend to die. He'd already resigned himself to not using his sword, blunted, and it couldn't cut through Gaara's defense but edge active and it might cut something off Gaara. That was just another reason this fight blew a fat one. Deciding to go on the offense, Naruto performs another shunshin to close the distance and tests the reaction speed of Gaara's defense. Appearing to the right side of Gaara, Naruto throws a kick, but the sand intercepts it, meeting his shin before he could make contact. Undeterred, he spins around with increased speed and aims a hit on Gaara's back, but once again, the sand blocks him, though he did get closer. Pulling back his fist, Naruto increases his speed again, performing a 3-hit combination to Gaara's left side. 2 were stopped, but the last slipped through and Gaara ate the body blow. Naruto was unable to follow up as he felt the sentient sand attempt to close around his fist. He dashed backward to create some distance again, signaling the end of their first exchange. The crowd, the Kazekage included, was shocked that someone managed to get through Gaara's defense with just taijutsu. Gaara was unhappy he was struck, never having been hit before. Naruto was shaking off the pain he felt and deduced Gaara had a layer of sand on his skin. He was taking deep breaths, not because the exchange was taxing as his natural stamina and training would allow him to do much more, but the adrenaline of trying to bypass the sand defense while avoiding it all the same. It was as he thought, his taijutsu would be of limited aid. The required degree of near perfection with him going near his top speed was just a waste of resources unless he softened Gaara up first. Gaara had gotten past whatever shock and discomfort he felt, his sand armor absorbing most of the impact, so the pain he felt was dull to begin with. He opted to take the initiative this time and not allow Naruto to attack as he pleased. Naruto could feel the ground moving beneath him and back flipped right before sand emerged underneath him. The sand began to give chase, but Naruto managed to dip and dodge each attempt. More focused on the sand than his opponent, he didn't see the sand spear headed toward him until it was too late. Narrowly, Naruto avoids serious damage, but it did graze his side, bloodying the Uzumaki. Reflexively, Naruto grabbed at his side and also stopped his movement, allowing Gaara to finally capture him with his sand by his ankle. Naruto thought quickly and moved quicker still. He tossed 2 kunai up into the air, both hurtling at impressive speeds. Naruto managed to replace himself with one of the kunai before Gaara could perform his sand coffin, and watched as his kunai was crushed by the jutsu. Naruto instantly grabbed the second kunai he threw, as he appeared right beside it, and on instinct alone channeled the supersonic chakra into it and threw it at Sand User. As Naruto fell to the ground, he watched as the kunai tore through Gaara's initial defense, and even pierced his sand armor at the shoulder, slicing him cleanly. Everything seemed to stop when Gaara's blood started to spill from his wound. The audience was unnaturally silent, not quite able to believe what they were seeing. Before long, their stupor was broken when they heard a shrill scream. "Blood! It's my blood!" he said in a panic and quickly put up a sphere of dense sand around him. Naruto was at a loss as to how to proceed. He could get through the defense, he'd shown that, but it would only continue to hurt Gaara, and the boy was clearly unstable. If he pressed the advantage, the Jinchuriki might do something regrettable and a lot of people may get hurt. Even if some of them deserved it, Naruto didn't want that on his conscience, so he waited. "And my blood. My blood," Gaara repeated, having a conversation none could hear. "You must kill him. He's just like the rest of them, he only wants to harm you. You don't need him, you don't need anyone. Is Mother right? Was he lying? Is he like everyone else? Just wanting to deny my existence?" Gaara was confused by his short dinner with the Uzumaki. That pain he saw in the other boy's eyes was so familiar to him. Only someone that had experienced a comparable hell of loneliness could have that look, but then what could he make of this? The boy claimed to want to be friends but wounded him. He was lying. That's what people do, they lie so they can kill you. You must kill him. I must? But if he were trying to kill me, why hasn't he attacked me again? Because we are too powerful. His trick won't work again. Just let me out and I'll take care of him. And all your enemies. I'll kill them all for you. Yes, you could kill them all. Gaara agreed. With ease. Release me and I'll do just that. And then where would I be? Alone. You don't need other people. You only need me, no one else matters. Then why hasn't the pain ever gone away? Why does it always hurt no matter how many I kill? You just haven't killed all who would oppose you. Once you do, you'll see. It'll be better then. You're lying. Your way doesn't work. It has never worked. Gaara thought. Release me now. You are nothing without me, so release me. No. No, I won't. I'm going to follow a different path and you will not stop me. Gaara said and stopped the conversation. Only a few minutes had passed since he created his sand dome, but everyone was waiting for what he'd do. His siblings expected to see the miniature sand monster emerge, as Gaara has used it before, but were shocked when the dome dropped, and it was just Gaara holding his injured shoulder. He gave a slight smile to Naruto, and Naruto nodded back in understanding. After a brief stare down, the match continued once again. Now with much more vehemence and resolve. Gaara attempted to trap Naruto in his sand, but like before, but much more carefully, Naruto slipped out of his traps, even running up a wall when cornered. The cut to his side had since healed, but lingering pain and tenderness limited Naruto's mobility. He was being pushed by the constant sand attacks and he didn't like it. While his stamina may be superior to Gaara's, it wouldn't matter if he's the only one having to move. He dodged a wave of sand and resolved to get closer. One Naruto was within 10 feet. He blurred through a series of hand signs while inhaling and then exhaled, subvocalizing his jutsu. Fire style, combustion stream. The jutsu made a beeline for Gaara, and while his sand intercepted it. Gaara had not expected the outcome, though, as a thin layer of the sand detonated in front of him. The rest of the sand absorbed the heat and shrapnel but couldn't absorb the concussive force, and Gaara was sent backward midair, facing the sky. Naruto wasted no time creating 3 shadow clones. One appeared under Gaara, kicking his back. The other 2 clones repeated the process, kicking the Suna Jinchuriki higher and higher, or further and further away from his protective sand. Before he could get his wits, Gaara saw Naruto above him, with a glowing orb in his right hand. Rasengan! He shouted mightily while bearing the underpowered jutsu in Gaara's stomach, sending him down at rapid speeds. Gaara landed with a thud. His sand hadn't been there to soften the blow, and all watched to see what would happen. It was clear. If you could see his face, Gaara was hurting and exhausted. He waved Baki over and the Jounin came to his ward. I give, Gaara said in his usual monotone, but there was a slight smile on his face. While suffering from disbelief, Baki still managed to call the match for Naruto, and after a period of silence the crowd erupted in cheers and applause at the battle they just witnessed. The Suna ninja gave both boys looks of respect and acknowledgement. It warmed something deep inside Naruto, and he could only smile bashfully as he scratched the back of his head. He waved to the crowd and walked to the exit, only to be met by Jiraiya. You did good, kid. Thanks, pervy sage. I told you not to call me that, brat. Get better jokes and I would. Tabeo. By Gaara, Temari and Kankuro arrived on the arena floor and picked their little brother up. Both were surprised he hadn't given in to his bijou and were impressed with his fight. Temari, Kankuro, I'm sorry for everything, he said, and both elder siblings smiled. It'd take a while, but maybe they could be a family again. Later that evening, the Sand siblings dropped in on Naruto at his room. Gaara's shoulder noticeably wrapped up. They brought a spread of native dishes and all had dinner together. Naruto enjoyed the food, especially the curried eggplant, but enjoyed the company even more. Temari and he exchanged some ideas on Winjutsu, whereas Kankuro put on an impromptu puppet show of their fight from earlier, except Gaara won this time. It was a nice night. Jiraiya was not having a nice night. He'd been summoned to the Kazekage's office, and while he had no desire to talk to the man he knew, he didn't have a choice. Kage were a lot of things, but rarely were they dull and joyless. Raza was a hard man that thought being a hard man was a personality. Jiraiya, through his network, knew about what the man did to his son and his attempts to kill the poor kid. If it wouldn't have destabilized the nation, Jiraiya considered removing the man from office. Nothing could justify what Raza attempted to do on multiple occasions. He arrived to the office with little fanfare, Raza only lifting his head as an acknowledgement that Jiraiya was there. He then handed Jiraiya a file folder. Jiraiya quickly skimmed the information, not liking what he was reading at all, and was, increasing, unconcerned with what the man's death would do to Wind Country. Once he finished reading, he met the man's eyes. Jiraiya's face a mask of emotionlessness. Why show me this? Jiraiya asked. Because you needed to know I have this. I was never fully sold on if your Jinchuriki was really his son. The facts my spies were able to gather suggested as much, and your interest in him did as well, but seeing him fight, it just felt like Minato. Naruto fights nothing like Minato. I should know, seeing as how I trained him from a genin. You're right, their styles are nothing alike, but there's an intensity of focus there. Even if the boy never knew a single one of his father's infamous jutsu, in Suna we believe the blood will tell. Given how Minato's and my reign as a Kage were similar, I wanted to see who created the superior weapon. It appears the fourth Hokage bested me. I'm not confirming Naruto is Minato's son, but I will tell you Minato didn't seal the Kyuubi in Naruto to make him a weapon. Sure, Jiraiya. He was too noble for that. You still haven't told me what you want. Now? Nothing. But we are due to renegotiate our alliance a few months after your planned AIM invasion. I just want you to know I have options, and as much as IWA may hate Suna, they hate Minato Namake's 1,000 times more. I won't be screwed over by Konoha again, Jiraiya. Tell your Sandaime that, and you can keep that file. I have copies. Jiraiya simply took the file and left. The next morning the Sand siblings bid Naruto a fond farewell, and he did the same. Delighted he may have made 3 new friends. As they traveled back, Naruto could tell something was bothered Jiraiya. His jokes were even more forced, but even as Naruto called him out on his act, Jiraiya wouldn't divulge any details, so he let up but was worried about his godfather. When the pair arrived back to Konoha, Naruto made a beeline toward the Hokage Tower and Jiraiya off to parts unknown. Naruto was motivated by something Gaara said during their parting. Naruto, it is admirable you let go of your hatred, but the villagers were wrong. While revenge is hollow, accountability is not. You deserve justice, my friend. He'd never really considered making the villagers pay after he'd resolved to move past his anger and resentment. He simply didn't know how to do so with the means available to him. He'd thought about, and on the last night of the trip it occurred to him what he needed to do. Some may hate him for it, some may call it petty, but Naruto was confident it was the right thing to do. He wasted no time arriving at the Hokage's office and gave his debrief, giving a detailed description of the fight. The old man seemed pleased with his win, but truthfully, Naruto didn't care how he felt about anything. As soon as his debrief concluded, Naruto started in on his second bit of business. Sandaime-sama, I speak to you now as the heir of the Uzumaki clan, as I have an official request. Hiruzen looked confused as to what clan business Naruto could have, but hoped it wasn't anything too serious. After his fight with Asuma, he just didn't want any more bad news. What is it, Naruto-kun? I'd like my clan's crest removed from all Jounin and Chunin vests and anything else he may have appeared on. I'm revoking Konoha's privilege of bearing it as a sign of friendship. Konoha hasn't been a friend to the Uzumaki in some time. Hiruzen could only pinch his nose as the headache this was going to cause. Jiraiya hadn't just drifted off when he returned. He, too, had a destination in mind. He didn't like Raza's threat. True, any Kage would attempt to strengthen their negotiating position to do better for their village, so in that regard he couldn't fault Raza. But he was holding a knife to Naruto's throat, and that Jiraiya would never abide. He resolved to not tell the old man what Raza had. If his plan worked out, the issue would be resolved before it ever came up. When he arrived to his destination, he laid out everything, every detail he had and his aims. It made his skin crawl, not what he was setting in motion. He'd been an assassin for decades, but who he'd gone to for help with this? He just hated allowing her to have anything over him. You want me to kill Raza? She said bluntly. Yes, he said, and waited for her list of demands. It was going to be painful, and he prepared for her to take a pound of flesh. Okay. Yes, okay. He'll be dead a month before the negotiations would be scheduled to begin. And what do you want? What could I possibly want from you, Jiraiya? My body, she snorted in response. I'd sooner seduce Tsunade. Ooh, could I watch? And when the pervert appears, that means it's time for you to go. Bye, Jiraiya. Fine. I'm leaving, but don't think I'll allow you to blackmail me over this. Goodbye, Jiraiya, she said again. Bye. Orochimaru waited a few minutes after Jiraiya left and then trashed her study. She'd had plans to kill Raza when she was going to have Suna attack Konoha, but those plans changed. Now he's made himself an obstacle to her plans, and that simply could not be tolerated. Raza would never see his children reach adulthood, and all because he dared to threaten Naruto. Hiruzen had never been apathetic to her smile. When she were young, it filled him with a fatherly instinct and a mentor's pride. Once matured, it lit the spark of desire within him, but as their relationship dissolved, the cruelty behind it left him cold, regretful, and mourning the loss of the innocent student he once knew. Now, it fills him with a hatred hotter than any katan jutsu known to man. He wants nothing more than to strangle the very life from her and then send her soul to the Shinigami for a light snack. What do you want? He asked, acid lacing every word. Kukuku, you seem to ask that a lot, sensei. She replied, and was not wrong. He needed to know what her plot was, what her endgame was, so he could stop it. He'd protect Konoha from her even with his last breath. Well, he bit back. Oh, nothing, just checking in. How's Asuma? He seemed really upset when we returned. Oh, she loved to twist the knife, Hiruzen thought. She was so very pleased with herself. Do you enjoy this? I've worked hard to mend my relationship with Asuma, and you tear it down for your own amusement. Not just my amusement, that was a byproduct. Besides, you only have yourself to blame. I bet you used the same tired excuses you used on me. I have so many demands on my time. My shinobi need me, the civilians need me, and while I love them, even my family makes demands of me. I just need something for myself. Just time to be Hiruzen, she said with a laugh. Hiruzen flinched as that had been exactly what he said to Asuma. He wanted his son to understand the pressures of being Hokage, of being subsumed by the responsibilities of the office. Asuma thought it was bullshit. You know it's a lie, right? Apparently so does she. You could have just retired. Any one of us were ready to take the mantle. You chose to hang on to power until after the Third Shinobi War. You were so in love with being the Hokage, the god of shinobi, that you couldn't make room for anyone else. That's the truth of the matter. I won't debate this with you. And if I have to suffer your vile presence, it should be for a reason. Now what do you want? I heard you lost us the privilege to wear the uzumaki symbol. Is that true? Oh, she's just aiming for all the soft spots today. You know it is. He's your student. Hi. But he went to sleep instantly upon his return, so we haven't had a chance to speak. Any ideas for a replacement? Maybe you could make it a contest, village-wide. To emphasize my blunder even more? Yes. Now you're getting it, she said with genuine enthusiasm. What do you want? Where does this all end? I won't let you hurt Konoha. Kukuku. Why would I want to hurt Konoha? I live here. I wouldn't burn my own house down just to spite you. I don't believe that for a second. Hiruzen said dryly. Okay, maybe I would, but I'm not. That has to count for something. Right, sensei? The poets will write epics about your magnanimity. Then I have truly lived a full and happy life. Once again, Orochimaru, what do you want? To tell you my Otonins have cleared the last of Danzo's known root bases. Can't say they killed them all, but they got most of them. Good, if that is all you may leave, Hiruzen said and sighed when she complied. It took a great deal of his discipline not to strike down the woman when he laid eyes on her, to so casually upend all the work Asuma and he had done to fix their relationship, and simply out of spite, to further hurt him. He knew she hated him, and it was justified to an extent, but when would enough be enough? He could contain her to the village, watch her every moment, but until he had a firm idea of what she truly wanted, he couldn't get ahead of her. He was stuck reacting to her moves and didn't know how to change the position. Orochimaru left with a smile on her face. People underestimate the power of petty revenge. And with each slight she was confident the old monkey would continue to think she had some grand scheme with him in mind when truthfully, there was only one target of her machinations, and it'd be a few years still before she could fully act on them. Thinking about him led her to considering the Raza issue. She could kill him in open combat, no problem. It'd literally be no problem at all, but assassinating him is something a little different. She couldn't just send a snake to poison him or sink her kusanagi into his heart. She realized being an S-ranked missing nin has left her assassination skills rusty. As far as the hiding all traces, you were the culprit part. She hasn't cared if someone knew she killed a target in years. Funny that time was on her side, and because she knew Raza a little, she could make some assumptions. The most obvious being he likely has the information set the release upon his death, but wouldn't place the copies somewhere too far out of his control. He trusted no one and essentially only tolerated Baki because the man was powerful and could keep Gaara on the leash. That'd have to be accounted for, but she'd task Jiraiya with it. He wouldn't keep his hands clean on this just in case he was trying to set her up. Granted, she had plans to implicate or outright kill him if he double-crossed her, but she was aware enough to realize the likelihood of needing these contingencies were slim. Jiraiya wasn't the fool he let others believe him to be. He was as hardened as any other war veteran, but he'd play it straight when it came to Naruto. Him staying away from Naruto wasn't entirely of his choosing. Her spies had sussed that out. Not that she'd acknowledge it. Why give up some emotional blackmail just because it isn't true? That's absurd. Clearing her mind of her digression, she went back to the how. He had guards, so she'd need to find out how loyal and diligent they were to his well-being. That might be an in. She might be able to seduce him, even if she found it repugnant. Not seduction in general, but Raza struck her as climaxer, and she didn't need nor want to deal with that. Or he'd just be really bad because he thought too highly of himself and would need constant reassurance that he was good or big or something else. Not worth the effort or the nice pair of panties she'd waste on the night. She chuckled to herself as she continued home. She still had time, so she'd think of something. The trio looked on to their singular enemy with exasperation. They'd thrown everything they could at him and nothing has worked. Their best formations, their most practiced attacks all failed to even graze him. It was a level beyond frustrating, and the feeling of fatigue they all shared only increased their negative emotions. Taking a steadying breath, the leader charged forth with his quarterstaff. A sweep to the legs was avoided with a mere hop. The following swipe to the ribs was dodged with an easy rotation. Not satisfied with just being on defense, the opponent sent a kick to the staff wielder that pushed him off balance. The other two of the trio finally re-engaged, having gained enough energy for a final onslaught. The smallest came with her sword. A textbook dual-handed overhead strike meant for the shoulder caused the target of the attack to jump sideways to avoid it. Said target then had to deflect a series of shuriken that was thrown by the third, the last member willing to play support. Not giving him any breathing room, the Kenjutsu user continued to press the attack, downward, upward and horizontal slashes all just missing. Each missed attack draining even more stamina, causing unsteady legs to shake under the strain. The Bojutsu user returned to the fray with a desperation-fueled ferocity he hadn't shown. The lone defender parried and dodged their attacks but never forgot about the third member lying in wait, and his patience was soon rewarded as said member decided to join in on the attack. He decided it was time to end this. As soon as the third was within striking distance, he swiftly relieved the Bojutsu user of his quarterstaff and downed him with a palm strike. Without an instance of hesitation, he threw the staff toward the other two opponents, the support ninja making the mistake of catching it as it left him open for the aerial assault of his opponent. 2 kicks, delivered with a spin, felled the boy and he was down for the count. In an impressive display of acrobatics, the attacker landed on his back and immediately kicking up as to not give his final enemy even a hint of an opening. Seeing she was alone, tired and outmatched, she laid her sword down in defeat and was immediately greeted with a smile and him rubbing her head. She broke out into a blush but slapped his hand away. "Don't do that." "Ah, why not, Moegi-chan? You did really well, you all did." Groans is all Naruto got in response. "You're too good, boss. We can't hit you," Konohamaru complained. "It's not that, I'm moving just a bit beyond you guys' speed. You just have to get a little more creative with your tactics. A direct assault can be useful, especially when collectively you have the superior skills, but when you're outmatched you have to find or create your own advantages and then exploit it," he said before looking to Udon. "You abandon the support role too fast, Udon. It's a good impulse to want to protect your team, but protection can take many forms. Had you continued to pepper me with shuriken, it might have created an opening for Kon or Moegi. You need to get familiar with how they fight so you can guide opponents to where they'd be most vulnerable." Naruto explained and saw Udon look down in shame or silent recrimination. "However, you're on your way there. Early on, when they needed a break or some space, you made it for them and you're good at letting them know what you're thinking. Once you start picking up some tactics and strategy in the academy, you'll be even better. And your shurikenjutsu is well trained for your age." Naruto finished and saw the boy smile brightly. "Moegi-chan, what's the most important thing to a swordsman or woman as the case may be? Breathing. If you can control your breathing, you can avoid tension in your muscles. Tension slows down reaction time and robs the strikes of speed and power." "Good. What's the second?" "Legs. They have to be strong and swift, steady and nimble." "Exactly. Once you were getting tired, your breathing control was shot and your legs were unsteady. When that happens, you have to switch things up. It takes dedication to learn kenjutsu, but you aren't a samurai. That isn't all you'll be using," he said, and she nodded, taking the criticism a little better than Udon. "But you are improving and you'll be ready to learn a style outside of the basics soon. Kon, good staff work. Speed and control are all acceptable, but you need to control your emotions. The moment you got frustrated, you started telegraphing your moves. If the other two are following your lead, then you'll make them predictable too. Predictable is the one thing you don't want to be." "Hi. With that being said, you guys are getting better now here." Naruto unsealed some canteens of water and some orange slices. "Have a snack and some water. I have to meet my Shursho soon." The trio did as told and chatted away about the academy and other events. Konohamaru begged Naruto to teach them some awesome jutsu and he promised to show them something next time. something small to get them started. He started to depart when he saw Ebisu arrive. He gave the man a nod in acknowledgement and departed, glad he got to spend some time with the brats as he hadn't seen them in a while. Uzumaki-san was right in his review. You'd all do well to heed his advice. Ebisu said. Yeah, boss is cool. He's even a chunin now, Konohamaru said, excitedly, and the other two nodded in agreement. Yes, quite cool. Now, are you three too tired for more training? No, they responded. Good. Then let's practice our chakra control, Ebisu said, and fought back the urge to laugh at their facial reactions. I know for a fact that Uzumaki-san practices his chakra control constantly, and it's one of the reasons he's considered an up-and-coming ninjutsu specialist. The better control you have, the more you can do with your chakra. Fine, Konohamaru huffed out in defeat. Good, grab some leaves. While training with the Khan and the gang is always fun, Naruto had to get to his training, and his Shursho didn't appear to be holding back today. His various pained grunts would be a clear sign of that. The goal was teaching him how to handle opponents faster than him by increasing his reaction time and sharpening his awareness. Ugh! He was having mixed results. Get up, Naruto-kun. I barely tapped you. I think we both know that's not true, Naruto said, picking himself up off the ground. Kukuku. Okay. But you're so durable. All my other training dummies break. I'm really feeling the love here, Shursho, Naruto replied, deadpan. That comes when you're older. I do have standards. Orochimaru shot back before going on the attack again. It was only the slimmest of margins that would allow him to avoid her strikes, a brief sound or the change in the wind. It wasn't a lot, and sometimes he was doing little more than guessing. He ducked and felt her leg brush the top of his head. He rolled forward, making her leg sweep useless. Not thinking, he performed a mule kick that connected with her arms, but it made her pause for a moment, long enough for Naruto to go on the attack. Using the surface walking technique, Naruto clung to her forearm and immediately twisted, bring his other leg up for another kick. She blocked it with ease and pulsed her chakra to dislodge her student. Naruto didn't let the loss of leverage deter him as he sent a punch to her face, but she evaded it without effort and tossed the red-haired Uzumaki away as she still had a hold of his leg. Naruto righted himself midair but had to go into evasion mode again as she began to attack relentlessly. Even with his enhanced stamina, being forced to fight above his level drained Naruto, and he was getting slower but not sloppy, his time with the Panthers teaching him how to hold himself even when fatigued. It didn't stop him from getting picked apart as she potshot Naruto until he hit the ground, breathing heavily. Okay, that's enough of that. Good. I don't think there was anywhere left on my body for you to hit me. Better I do it than an enemy, Naruto-kun. Besides, you are improving. As expected, she said with a glint in her eyes. Why? Please don't make me say it. We had a deal, and from my understanding, Naruto Uzumaki doesn't go back on his word. Why couldn't my nindo be I'd eat as much ramen as I can? Stupid me. Stop stalling. Fine. I'm improving because you, Shursho-sama, are the world's greatest kunoichi/genius and the best of the Sannin. See, that wasn't so hard. Now, how is everything else coming along? You having your clones train with the Kiri swords? 2 of them. Samahata still won't accept me yet, and I'm not going to be a meal for a sword. And the Kubikiri, Zabuza's sword is all wrong for my frame. Even the name is a mouthful. Kubikiribocho. Would you look at that? Guess I can handle a mouthful. Kukuku. Future reference. Orochimaru said with a wink, causing Naruto to blush slightly at her innuendo. I'd recommend coming to an accord with Samahata. It's too useful not to. Now, how about your ninjutsu? Anything new? Maybe a few developments. I wanted to have something definitive before I came to you. So, you know how we've been making plans for any pair of the Akatsuki that I may run into. Yes, you seemed confident you had workable plans for Kakuzu and Haiden, but thought Sasori and Deidara would give you and your team problems. Yeah, I may have the Sasori part figured out, even if he's a nightmare for Kurinai-sensei, Shino, and Shika. But Deidara was the hardest for me to plan for, given he's a long-distance threat and his natural counter is my worst element. Naruto said and saw her nod. Making a long-distance Raitun jutsu is difficult and inefficient. That's the general consensus. Are you about to show me something different? She asked in excitement. Yep. Watch, Naruto said before performing a lightning style. Lightning beast running jutsu and saw the standard-looking Raitun peter out at 10 meters. Orochimaru didn't look confused nor disappointed as she knew her student wouldn't waste her time, so she waited patiently for Naruto to continue his demonstration. Naruto then ran through the same hand signs and performed the jutsu again, except this time the beast was red and didn't give out until it was 25 meters away. Red lightning? I wonder if it's similar to Kumo's black lightning. I don't know. From my understanding, the black lightning is more powerful than standard Raitun techniques. The red lightning isn't really more powerful, but it can travel further distances and something else. What? In response, Naruto threw 4 kunai that were 15 meters apart and then performed another red lightning jutsu, aimed at the center kunai. To Orochimaru's surprise, the jutsu split off and hit the other kunai once it made contact. I called that my chained lightning jutsu. Whereas a normal lightning technique is easy to avoid if you're not the intended target, the red lightning seeks other conductors. Best thing? Chakra sources fall into that category. Lost a lot of clones to that one. Could it be made to hone in on a specific target? If I were more of a sensor? Possibly. Not having much luck with Karen-chan's technique? She inquired. No, there's a block. I feel like I'm right there, but until it's resolved, I won't make much progress with it. Keep at it, you'll figure something out, but even now you continue to impress me. I'd suggest developing a focus-piercing attack to go along with your wide-area effect one. Orochimaru said after a moment of contemplation. I'll dedicated some clones to it, Shursho. Good. Any other new developments? Some rough ideas. Once I get something more solid, I'll let you know. Excellent. Now, you've rested enough, so unseal your sword, so we can get your kenjutsu practice in. Awesome. Let's get wild, Shursho. Naruto exclaimed after unsealing his katana. Oh, Naruto-kun. So eager to penetrate me. Don't say things like that. Tabeo. Naruto yelled, fighting a full blush. Kabuto was annoyed he had to stop his work to answer the door. He knew his mistress would not interrupt her training session with the Uzumaki, and with everyone else gone, it left it to him. He'd grumble if it weren't wholly beneath him. The Nara that was on the other side of the door didn't surprise him, and he escorted him toward the Uzumaki. However, when he heard a feminine giggle from the training grounds, he lost his footing. The white snake didn't giggle. She laughed in such a way to state her superiority, the predator taunting the prey. She laughed, and it sent shivers down one's spine as you awaited the lethal strike or had a sense of foreboding as she knew something you didn't. She laughed and shit got done. She does not giggle. And yet he knows what he heard, and it was just one of the many distressing things about their time here. Or really, since her fascination with the Uzumaki became something more. They haven't tortured anyone together in 2 months. When they were killing Root Nin, she didn't even try to break them mentally. Just stab. No artistry or anything. She hasn't even forcibly experimented on someone in a while. She was becoming something different, and Kabuto didn't like that. He needed his mistress back. The Nara and the Uzumaki left, but Kabuto was focused on Orochimaru as she stared at him, which was always unnerving but double so for someone that knew what she were truly capable of. Whatever has been bothering you lately, you need to deal with it, Kabuto-kun, she said simply, and he only nodded. She was right, he simply needed to deal with his problem. Itachi took his leave when Naruto made plans to go to the annual Inoshikacho picnic. He was due for a shift change but had to report to the Sandaime before he could call it a day. The Sandaime suspects Orochimaru is up to something and plans to turn Naruto against the village. It's an understandable fear, but Itachi has yet to see any attempt to do so. Suggestive comments signaling a willingness to blur the lines between master and student? Yes. And Itachi really didn't know if the Sandaime would actually prefer that to the alternative. As he arrived in the Hokage's office, he kneeled and awaited instruction. Report. The Hokage ordered his most loyal ANBU. Nothing to report today, Hokage-sama. She has stuck to the same training regimen as when she began his instruction. How is he progressing? Well, Hokage-sama, whatever limitations his body is presenting, they are finding ways to work around it, and he takes well to her teachings on tactics. And his ninjutsu? Innovative. He seems to demonstrate something new with frightening regularity. He may surpass the Nidaime as Konoha's greatest jutsu creator. A high bar, this I know from experience. So how would you rate him? He would not fall under our understanding as a natural genius like Kakashi and myself were called. He is prodigious. His output has more than earned him the title, but it's hard to classify. What do you mean? Hiruzen asked in curiosity. If you judge him by existing standards, he is talented but mostly gets by through his hard work. This isn't incorrect but misses the point. I believe to truly understand Naruto-kun, you'll have to judge him against himself. His path won't be like anyone else's. Convention won't have any relevance for him. A paradigm shift? Hiruzen asked rhetorically as he understood it. There were people who could excel in the most magnificent ways in what was known, like a child that can get perfect scores on any test. But there were those, the select few whom thought so differently that they simply weren't meant to be understood by existing criteria. They broke the mold. Someone like that could be hard to train, as finding out how to reach them would tax a sensei that desired to utilize the tried and true. It hurt Hiruzen to think this, but Naruto's neglect might have been the best thing for him. Because there was no one to tell him he was wrong or wasting time, Naruto's development could chart a course none had attempted before. He didn't know what was possible or impossible, and his natural Uzumaki stubbornness would ensure the boy wouldn't deem something impossible until he was satisfied it was so. His stunningly large chakra capacity, ever increasing according to the village's censor corp, meant Naruto could do things at a much younger age than almost any before him. Throw in shadow clones, and the boy's potential was bordering on infinite. Only hindered by time and imagination, it was a scary prospect. No way I could pry a specific jutsu out of you? Sorry, Hokage-sama, but it falls under clan jutsu until Naruto teaches another. No hints. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama. That's fine, Weasel. Is there anything else for you to report? He asked and saw Itachi shake his head no. So, nothing that would give me pause? The Hokage asked. Nothing that is outwardly sinister, Hokage-sama. What do you mean by that, Itachi? We've accepted she is interested in Naruto and potentially grooming him for something. The only question was what. I believe she may be shaping him into her ideal paramour. Itachi answered dryly and saw the disturbance in the Sandaime's face. A what? He said in disbelief. Paramour. Her future lover, Hokage-sama. I know what a paramour is, child. Hiruzen said, dismissively. His mind now elsewhere as he wondered what his vile student had planned. Did she want a repeat of past events? A long-term seduction of Naruto only to wound him so severely he too turns toward the darkness? Minato's son labeled a traitor and using all of his skill and power to attack the Leaf? That would be bad, beyond bad. But it would be a fitting revenge for two of the men that denied her the dream of being Hokage. To twist the hidden prince of the village so much he becomes its greatest enemy. He had to get her away from him, that had always been clear. There were but so many ways to do that. With the upcoming assault on AIM, maybe he could arrange for her not to survive, but if that failed he'd damn himself. Or if she were prepared and left word to Naruto, he'd believe her without question. Once again, she was so far ahead of him, the game was half over before he realized he was playing. He wanted to admonish himself and his diminishing prowess but needed to focus. She could not be allowed to break Naruto. The boy was meant for great things. He has the drive to become something special. Hiruzen knew that a lot of Naruto's loss of love for Konoha was because of him, the one person he trusted. He always assumed he could make the boy understand without being truthful, with kind words and ambiguous statements. That wasn't the case, and he'd never mend the relationship. He had to accept that. But he did love and value Naruto, even if past actions would argue otherwise. He couldn't allow him to turn toward the darkness, her darkness, that he helped cultivate, a seed having borne fruit and looking to seed the earth again. A cycle of his own creation, built on selfishness and arrogance. He couldn't let that be his legacy, the coda to his long life. He was a flawed man but not an evil one. He'd sought peace when possible, lived to protect the king of the village. His positives were greater than his failings. He'd save Naruto from her. "Thank you, Weasel, you are dismissed." The ANBU wasted no time departing. Hiruzen then spoke to the ANBU still in his office. "Please retrieve Anko Mitarashi," he ordered. He didn't like what he was about to do, nor that he'd be playing on Anko's hatred, but if he could get another woman to turn Naruto's head before Orochimaru could ever sink her fangs into him, then her plan would be for naught. Naruto would only hate him more for the manipulation, but it was for the best. The boy didn't understand how truly evil she was. Ino was being troublesome. Almost everyone was today. He didn't care for this annual get-together, a celebration of the long-standing alliance between the three clans. It was too much, too many people, too much interaction. As the heir, it was expected of him, but it was a mind-numbing waste of time, and yet he had little to no choice. He accepted it, but couldn't people try to not be annoying? And what was with the sudden interest in his teammate anyway? "Stop ignoring me, Shika." "Don't call me Shika, troublesome blonde. You let Naruto call you Shika. And that would be between him and I." "Fine, be that way. I was just trying to learn more about your teammate." "Yeah, and I'm curious as to why. Why the sudden interest, Ino? What do you really want? Because if this is just about gossip, then you should drop it." "It isn't about that. Not anymore," she thought. "When we were at the academy, I told Sakura not to be his friend because he was bad. We were only 6 and I was going off what everyone said. I didn't know if it was true, but I thought I was doing the right thing. Why would I care about this? Because he does. I tried to talk to the new girls in his clan, and they knew me as the girl that chased his friend away and wouldn't even entertain talking to me beyond that." "Okay. So then there's nothing to do," Shikamaru said. He knew Naruto likely didn't care. The anecdote more of a reference point than anything else, but it wasn't his job to tell her that, nor did he really see any benefit to helping her. Ino, frankly, was selfish, vain, and self-centered. She wrote Naruto off without knowing him and hadn't become interested until he was acknowledged as a clan heir. Shikamaru knew Naruto had a low opinion of a lot of Konoha's residents and knew why. He couldn't blame his teammate but also wouldn't encourage it. Ino being nakedly two-faced would only be another example to add to the multitude. "But I want to apologize, to start over." Shikamaru sighed. He had to be direct. Ino wouldn't get subtle, nor would she be led to a conclusion. It had to be blatant. "Why? You didn't care when we formed our teams. You believed he was a loser with practically no evidence. Even when I told you that was wrong, you didn't believe me. But now that he's a clan heir and shown some skills, you want to make up? Just leave him alone, Ino. There will be plenty of people here. No reason to bother someone you wanted nothing to do with up to 5 minutes ago. So, that's it? I can't change? Can't try to make things right? No, because you haven't changed. Which is fine, no one cares, but don't make this out to be something it isn't. That's just too troublesome." "Wow, way to be a friend, Shikamaru," Ino said in a huff. "We're friends?" Shikamaru asked, surprised Ino thought they were. "Of course we are. We've known each other since forever. That doesn't make us friends. This is such a drag." "Fine then, Shikamaru. Since I'm so horrible, I won't bother you, happy?" Ino responded, hands on her hips. "Not really. Asshole. You'll get over it." Ino wanted to respond but saw two figures approaching Shikamaru and her. His teammates. Shino was dressed like the stereotypical Aburame, large jacket, black pants, and shades. Naruto was wearing a red, long-sleeved, V-neck shirt with black pants and had his hair pulled back in a loose bun. She had to admit the oft-maligned man bun worked on him. "Hi, Shika," Naruto said with a wave and then peered around him to see Ino there. "Hi, Ino-san. Troublesome." Hello, Naruto-san." "Shino." She greeted, a little taken aback at his cheerfulness. "Naruto-san, can I speak to you for a moment?" "Sure," he responded and followed her away from his teammates. Seeing her look conflicted caused him to drop the formalities. "What can I do for you, Ino?" "I want to apologize, Naruto, for telling Sakura not to be your friend. It was cruel and I thought I was doing the right thing." I'm sorry. Oh, has that been bothering you? Of course I forgive you, we were little then. Really? Yeah. You don't think I'd hold a grudge from something a 6-year-old did to me, did ya? Naruto asked with a grin. I wasn't sure, she said and felt much better. Well, I'm going to let you get back to Shikamaru. Thanks, Naruto. Ino spoke, walking away. No problem. Naruto called back, heading over to Shikamaru and Shino. Did you resolve your business with her? Yeah, but it was weird. Anyway, how are you guys? I am well, Naruto-san. How was your mission to Suna? Fine. Fought a little, ate a little, made some friends. Of course you did. Shikamaru muttered, causing Naruto to laugh. The trio prepared them some food and found a place away from the crowds, talking about their training, missions, and Shikamaru's long list of complaints. So, I have to get a new vest because of you, troublesome redhead. You could use a tighter fit anyway. You should fire your tailor, Shika. I know a guy. Shino offered helpfully, with Naruto giving him the thumbs up. See, Shino even knows a guy. Naruto paused to digest Shino's words before exploding. Why don't I know any guys? I won't let you get ahead of me, Aburame, but I already am. Why? As you have already stated, you have no guys. I have plenty and therefore will win. Are we really talking about this? Is this really happening? I must request you be silent. Shikamaru-san, as Naruto-san, is on the cusp of admitting his defeat. I admit nothing. Just you wait, I'll have guys and they will be of a superior quality than your guys. This argument is stupid. You both have to realize this. Shikamaru said and saw that neither of them were paying attention. Hey, you troublesome teammates. Don't ignore me. You both always get into these weird competitions that don't matter. He started it / it was started by him, they both said. Anyone else would form a sweat drop, but even Shikamaru's sweat thought it was too troublesome. Can we get back to the topic at hand? No, Shikamaru-san, we cannot. Not until Naruto-san once again acknowledges his defeat. You cheated last time, Tabeo? And the time before that? The challenge was ambiguous, Naruto said, animatedly, hair flying in all directions. Troublesome, you submitted the challenge. How could you confuse yourself? Quite easily, I imagine. Shino answered with the barest hint of amusement. Aburame with the dagger. You're both bastards, you know that? What's that? I can't hear you from down there. Shikamaru retorted through yawns. Shika, you're lying down. Height doesn't even matter when you're lying down. Shino, you hear something? It sounds akin to a girlish shriek. Why? Because before a boy's balls drop, they may have a high-pitched voice. Oh, so that's how you want to play it? Fine. I'm throwing a water whip party and you're both invited, Naruto said. Eyes all white and hair formed into 9-tail-like formations. He instantly formed the water whips and gave chase to his teammates. May have pushed it too far this time, Shino. And running is so troublesome. Shikamaru observed while dodging Naruto's whips. Such is the price of victory, Shikamaru-san. Shino replied, narrowly avoiding a whip himself. Troublesome. It was late and he wanted to go home. He'd had a full and stressful day. It was always at this time he wondered if he should just give Tsunade the seat and be done with it. He could still shepherd them through the aim assault while ceding the day-to-day work to her. She might not like it, might fight tooth and nail, but it'd be worth it to get out of that seat. He wanted to go home, but fortune was not on his side. Have you lost the rest of that fool mind of yours, Hiruzen? Koharu. Ignoring that I'm still the Hokage. What would lead you to talk to me like this? You assigning Anko a mission she, and I quote, is guaranteed to leave me gutted and rotting in an unmarked grave. Anko was being a bit hyperbolic. Besides, I'm sure you both agree with me that we can't let Orochimaru taint Naruto-kun. She can't be allowed to foster darkness within Minato's boy. Oh, he's Minato's boy now? And we actually take that into account. We don't need to have that argument tonight, Koharu. Hamura said, though he too disliked Hiruzen manipulated them. They didn't want to deny Naruto his heritage, but were also concerned about his lack of protection and the wave of assassins that may come after Minato's legacy. To know that wasn't Hiruzen's only motivation offended both of them, but they'd yet to address it. There seemed to always be something more important to handle. Fine, we won't do that tonight, but Hiruzen, you are making a mistake. And worst yet, you're being obvious and sexist. Seeing his confused face, Koharu continues, Anko is one of our best kunoichi, so you assign her a mission to fuck a child? You would never assign Kakashi to screw a 12-year-old girl, and we all know that. I didn't order her to have sex. Seduction doesn't have to end in sex. Even if she just made him fall in love, it'd be enough. Did she tell you why I wanted her to do it? Yes, and you're being irrational. Even if she did have designs on Naruto, that's not illegal, and we don't act against our shinobi without evidence of wrongdoing. We aren't Danzo, Hamura answered. Besides, why are you so convinced that she must have ill intentions for Naruto? Why bother coming back here, giving us full access to her own hidden village if she has some dastardly plan? She may be arrogant, all of your students are, but she's not stupid, so why make this unnecessarily difficult? God knows, Naruto had more than enough incentive to leave the village. She wouldn't have had to try hard to induce him to do so, because it would be her ultimate revenge against Minato and is just the sick kind of poetic she likes. Hiruzen defended but saw Koharu wasn't convinced, but Hamura understood the man's words. Koharu took notice of Hamura's expression and realized she was out of the loop. What aren't you telling me? Hiruzen breathed in deeply before releasing it with a sigh. For a brief period, Orochimaru and I were having an affair. I sent her to Danzo as a means of ending it, as an attempt to save my marriage and a way of dealing with the guilt of coercing her into getting an abortion. Hiruzen didn't have to wait long for the slap that greeted his confession. So, you're one of them? I thought better of you, Hiruzen. I thought you had more integrity and discipline than that. I'm sorry I disappointed you, but nothing can change what happened, and it can't be used as a reason to turn a blind eye to her actions. No, but it does add context. I watched that girl grow up, her and Tsunade both. While not a direct sensei, I was proud to have helped in molding them into the stellar kunoichi they became. It hurt me just as much as you when she turned bad. It never made complete sense. She had darkness. She could be sadistic, but she always had control. Always. And then out of nowhere she becomes a monster? It never added up until now. She and in turn the village paid for your wandering dick, Hiruzen. Yes, it has, and I want to rectify that. Don't you see why I need to limit her influence, all of her influence on him? I see an old man overreacting. Or do you just not like Naruto potentially getting something that was once yours? I'm not that crass, Koharu. This isn't about some lingering possessiveness. Maybe not, but we don't see the wisdom in assigning Anko this mission. If you had more evidence or even a better argument, but her just being blindly spiteful won't do. And as one of the daimyo stipulations, you know we can overrule you if we both agree. We do, Hiruzen. This mission is cancelled. Hamura voiced. You're both making a mistake. Only time will tell, but Hiruzen, did you ever stop to consider that maybe Naruto could be a good influence on her? Maybe bring back the loyal kunoichi she used to be? Koharu asked. If he were older? Maybe, but he's still a child in many respects. And that child rallied a nation to fight for itself. He might surprise you. They both may if you give them a chance. She said as both advisors left, leaving the longest-serving Hokage to his own thoughts, but try as he may. He simply couldn't picture a version of this where Naruto didn't turn out for the worst.